effectively the Steam Deck with RDNA 2 is the baseline of what people find acceptable for gaming on a handheld right now. It's long in the tooth, and we desperately need that fix coming in soon.
And welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom. This episode is brought to you by Ace Magic and their S3A8945 HS Mini PC. Link in the description for that, and also a link in the description to CDkeyoffer.com where you can get Windows 11 Pro for $23. Welcome. Please introduce yourself. You came on about a year and a half ago, so it's long enough, I'm sure, and people should go back and listen to it. Some people missed it, and even if they didn't, just a refresher, you're like, who are you? What do you do? And what keeps you doing the handheld stuff? Because you do keep doing it, and a lot of people shift to different products over time.
So initially when I started doing my YouTube stuff, it was just kind of like goofing around. It'd just be like gaming stuff. And then I started looking at indie games. And then 2015, also earlier, 2008, 2011, I actually worked with like a blog and some buddies. And we actually looked at this device here. This is called the Open Pandora. So this was like a community effort, ARM-based Linux handheld. And that was like 2008, finally came out in 2011.
If I may ask, what games would you even run on that?
So for this was just mostly emulators. Like you would just look at it for like playing emulation. So it's supposed to be something that was better than PSP. Right. And it was exciting times. And there was like a dude that came on named RE64 who wrote a DynoRec for N64 for ARM. And it was like finally N64 emulation would be possible on this device. So it's like a lot of cool stuff that was happening in the background. And so it was mostly just for that. And then in 2015, there was like a lot of smaller end stuff, and it's mostly emulation focused. So there's like the Dingu and the Wiz and the GP32X. And GPD was making stuff, and another company that got washed out through an Nvidia deal. But they were doing Android stuff, and then GPD in 2015 was like, hey, we're thinking about doing an x86 PC gaming handheld. And that was Intel ARM. It was a Cherry Trail,
I remember that.
8750. And I was flipping out. Like, I was like, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for so long. And I was sure everyone was going to be like, oh, PC gaming handhelds, this is going to be huge. And it turned out I was the only one. I was the only one like screaming at the rooftop. So I was like showing Doom 2016 and Fallout 4. I had to like really strip these games down to get them playable. And then the GPD Win 2 came out, and like for me, 2017, 2018 for everyone else. And I just kind of stuck with PC gaming handhelds because I moved over to PC gaming in 2010. I was more like, it was like my whole gaming history was like, if we look at it from like the 90s, I was PC and console. And then in 2000s, it was like only MMOs you'd be playing on PC. So it was like 360 heavy. And then in 2010, I was like, I'm going back to PC, and I stuck there. So having a PC gaming handheld was like, I am even further only going to stay in PC gaming handhelds. And that's really where I've always stayed. So I just genuinely care about this segment and the efficiencies of pushing these as far as possible while also saving as much power as possible, which to this day we still are fighting with, trying to get the maximum efficiency out of these, because companies just don't care, or they want to push it to the metal.
Well, if they win by 5% in a benchmark, they think that will market better than actually gaming for 4 hours, right?
Yeah, yes, that's literally, yeah. So they just don't care really, right? They just like push clocks to max. Who cares about voltage? Just let's, pedal to the metal. And even like a lot of our power configs and stuff are like legacy stuff when CPUs would, Northbridge and Southbridge memory controller was on the motherboard. Things were outside of the die. So a lot of power, ACPI type of standards were just CPU and like not cognizant of anything like with Encore. So it's just like, that's probably why I stay in the PC handheld gaming space. And I enjoy looking at it through the lens of the whole entire package, like not just pushing it all the way, because that's not super valuable all the time. Like it is for some people, but you need to, understand and qualify things. in different spheres, so that you can get a good idea of just how good something is and how low power it is. So that's largely why I stay there, and it's generally what I'm passionate about. But as a day job, I my title is senior Linux systems engineer, stock market stuff, and that's what I do for my main job. And mostly YouTube is just a hobby for me.
When it comes to the power thing, that's why I'm pretty excited about the PS6 handheld. I think that's why a lot of people still get like a Nintendo Switch 2. Because like people have complained about the Nintendo Switch 2's battery life with some hard to run games, but for being honest, it's still usually at least 2 hours. And
Mm-hmm.
this is important compared to, I think, to PC handhelds. It's a consistent 2 to 4 hours. Every time it's going to do that well.
Yeah.
Whereas with PC handhelds, just randomly it might get 45 hours of battery life because that's the nature of the beast. And so I wonder, I don't even know if I really have a question. I see you nodding that you agree, but like what you kind of think about that, like where you see Nintendo or PlayStation 6 in the future's handheld, like not being afraid to go down to 1.2 gigahertz, stay there, and probably park at 10 watts for like 4 hours of gaming. And like, what would it take to get because I would be much more interested if someone managed to like take some like Hawk Point or Strix APU and like only enabled 4 Zen 5 C cores, and only 12 compute units. Said, no,
Yeah.
we're doing it. We're staying at 10 watts, and this will have a 3 hour battery life. Like, what do you? People will vote with their wallets, I suppose. Maybe it takes one of those to succeed, but like, what do you think would? And do you think someone will try that soon? Like, what would it take for them to do that? And do you have any inklings or hear? Because you talk to these companies. Do you think that's something any of them are working on?
So yeah, it's an interesting conversation, and I think Gabe Newell from Valve, he was on record saying he was surprised at how many people were buying the most expensive Steam Deck when it launched.
Hmm.
He thought that it was going to be the cheapest one. It turned out that wasn't the case at all. And GPD has relayed to me that because there's people that have talked to me lots of times like, hey, why doesn't GPD make this but use this chipset because it's cheaper and it's low power? And I've talked to them, and GPD comes back to me is like, we would do that, but no one buys it.
Hmm.
And really, that's what it comes down to, is that when people have the option, like the GPD Win 5 right now, you have the 385 and the 395. Even though 385 is still going to be great, especially compared to like Z2E or HX370 handhelds, people are buying the more expensive stuff. So it's like, you would think that, especially because the price difference is pretty large, why wouldn't they just go with the 385? And people just buy the more expensive thing, and they just want the more expensive thing. And when you look at Switch 2, one of the things that's really nice is that they basically just have power profiles, right? They're like, we're at this clock for GPU, we're at this clock for the CPUs, this is what it runs at. And when you are at this maximum clock, this voltage is understood, you are going to get 2 hours of battery life, regardless if you pump the display up to the
Hmm.
max. This is what it's going to be. And you can divine those values pretty easily. And really, all of it ever comes down to is managing voltage on these chips, right? So it's just, if you can min max the efficiency of the voltage on the chip so that what you're getting out of it is most ideal, then that's all you really need to do. And largely, is insofar as for AMD, the biggest thing for us is that, hilariously, it's just on paper, bigger number better type of thing. You look at HX370 at 16 CUs at 2.9 gigahertz. It's an insane amount of compute that they have in the GPU, and then they have a tiny little coffee straw that they feed it with memory bandwidth. And like, well, why don't I get this performance? It's because you just can't feed it. It's sitting and waiting. So literally, that's just the case. If we just had more memory bandwidth, all of a sudden you'd be doing gangbusters. And that's largely one of the reasons why Strix Halo is so exciting in this space, is because we finally have bandwidth and also cache. And it's like a two thing that we've been waiting for forever. And it's like, oh, here it is. And I just been posting like small snippets of stuff,
Hmm.
and like, here's the Steam Deck OLED at 15 watt running Eternal, and here is Strix Halo running at 15 watt. Same settings, 720p native, low settings, and you have almost 2 times the performance inside the same TDP package. Now, total power is a little bit skewed there, but it's about a 4 watt
Sure.
total difference wise. Not crazy, not crazy at all. But you look at those, and even if you factor in for total system power, where you're sitting at is considerably better. So the advantages of going super wide on CUs is that you can actually go at lower clocks, lower voltages, and then just feed it appropriately. But on 15 watt, the memory controller, we don't really have full clocks on memory.
Hmm.
So you don't get that full bandwidth until you hit about 20 watt on Strix Halo, but we do have that cache that's still there, and it does help. So that's basically all it ever comes down to is I don't think, to answer your question, generally speaking, mainstream general people, bigger number better is what sells. And that's why they've been keep on. That's why they continue to do so. But for console specific type of stuff, you look at Switch 2 and PS6, they are going to define these hard limits because they're going to design entire cooling systems around them
Hmm.
and what people are going to anticipate and use them for. So I think, I've always tried to advocate for people trying to say, especially for like Z1E or 74, all of those, I'm like, just go to 17 watt because that's your efficiency barrier, right? Like, yeah, you can go to 28 watt, but the difference, like going from 15 watt to 18 watt is a 10% performance gain, and you're only spending 30% more power. But for another 15% performance gain, you have to go from 18 watt to 28 watt. So you're spending a tremendous more power just to get that same perf gain. And it's like, that's kind of silly. Like, that's not a worthwhile trade off. So why would you do it? And that's why I try to advocate for that. But generally speaking, people just want to, they
Hmm.
kind of crave that power. Strix Halo, I get greedy myself. Like, I try to like, all right, I'm just going to try to limit myself to 25 watt. And then I know I have so much power in the hopper that I can't help myself. And I'm just like, let me just put it up to 32 watt. Let me put it up to 35 watt. And no matter what I do, the power increase percentage wise, I get that same performance increase. So it's just, you feel that, and it's intoxicating. You just really want to keep pushing.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I would do that all the time too with like my Minis Forum tablet with a Hotpoint APU in it, where it's like I got it knowing I was going to play AAA games on the go at 1080p, 60, sometimes 900p or lower, But and it worked fine. But there would be times where I would just keep trying to overclock it because it is fun
Yeah,
to see if I can get this to hold 45 watts instead of 28.
yeah,
All of a sudden, Battlefield's running at 70 frames per second online instead of 60, and that it's like, oh, but I wonder if I could get to 76. There's something about low end devices that is extra fun to tweak them. There's just something about it. And it's not just
yeah.
because you need more performance, it's fun to see if you can get it.
Yeah, I also think that the benefit of working on the low end side is that you have a greater visibility of what the platform actually is capable of.
Mm,
Because when you work from the top end down, everyone is like, going all unleashed. C states disabled, power config, high performance. They have no idea of what is actually, what constraints inhibit the platform in any particular way. So when you go from the other side, when you go from absolute low performance, when you see the curve of performance and where voltage and stuff starts to get out of whack, then you have a more like holistic understanding of what it's capable of, and you can get like a better thumbprint of also with successors, right? So like when you get like AMD or whatever saying, hey, it's 2x performance per watt, you can kind of just like, oh, I know what that is in my head. And then just kind of conceptually graph that out, even theoretically. So that's always nice to like just do. But I prefer going low to high rather than just going to the max because it's, you have the days of like, Sky Lake, Ice Lake, Coffee Lake, where Intel was doing the same thing and just pushing
mm.
frequency up a little bit just to sell a new product. It was the same thing, just getting hotter and pushing more stuff, and everyone was just buying whatever that chip was, and it really didn't matter. It's basically the same thing.
All right. So we've been dancing around it. Chris Strick writes in and he says, since the last conversation, Strix Halo has become a real product. You can't just talk about what you think it will do. You have both tested it. How has it worked out compared to your expectations? And what model would you recommend to gamers, if any?
So the one that I would personally recommend, especially for like the GPD Win 5, once you start going to 395, the price starts getting a little
Yeah.
very high,
I mean,
right?
it's an
Even
AI super chip, really, that you're using for gaming.
yeah. So it's like when you even like the crowdfunding discounted price that GPD has, it's like 1620 for the low end 395 part, and the 385 is 1450. And 1450 I feel is like a far easier thing to stomach, especially when you consider the Lenovo Legion Go 2, which is 1350. So it's like, oh, if it's just $100 more, you can get sensationally better performance. And for $100 more, it's like easy recommendation. So I really love the 385 a lot, even though GPD has not sent it to me, and I think I'm just gonna buy one.
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to test. But I mean, it took me all week to do benches, from every 5 watt increment from 15 to 50 watt on like 7 different games. And then also do 720p and 1080p so that we can kind of see everything, but also so I can have those numbers so that I can more easily test very quickly against other stuff. So yes, ultimately the answer is I really love the 385, and it's what I ultimately recommend. Um, and if you just are the type of person that just wants to have the best, the 1620 model, the 395 with 32 gigs of RAM is what I would say that you should get. Going to 64 gigs of RAM is a huge increase in cost and will benefit you. I don't think it's going to be a benefit for gaming purposes at all.
Well, so yeah, that's interesting. Um, yeah, my overall opinion is 385 is the obvious gaming one. You have the same memory bandwidth as the 395, and then you also 8 cores is more than enough for gaming. So, and 32 gigs of RAM is probably fine. I mean, you're not using this for anything that crazy. I mean, you have enough for it is enough. I mean, 32 gigs means in a game that needs a lot of VRAM, you can have 16 gigs for VRAM, 16 gigs for system.
Yeah,
Most games you'll probably do 24 for system, 8 gigabytes for VRAM, at
yeah,
least for the next year. Um, and that's far, far more than enough. You know, I have a 390 laptop, and I'm actually kind of blown away by the performance of even just 32 compute units in this thing. Um, I did go for 64 gigabytes of RAM, but that's because I also use it for work. And there's just,
sure,
no way that I wouldn't, that long term I'd be able to. And it came with a 3-year warranty as well. So I'm like, this thing is going to be used by me for at least 3 years. I'm not going to let this thing run out of RAM. I would say with the 395, that's where I would kind of advocate for 64 gigabytes just because you're spending so much money anyways.
right.
Do you really want to handicap yourself?
Yeah,
Go on.
that's true. If you're gonna like, if you have aspirations of docking it and just using it as your main PC, it's a monster, right? Like 16 cores of CPU, you like it can go. So GPD has refined the heatsink, which I don't have. So they are now they improved it a bit, and now they're doing 85 watt on the system.
Hmm.
So you can push this fairly hard. And if you wanted to just use it for like video editing and all the other stuff, productivity purposes, right? Um, and like low end AI stuff as that gets developed. There is that available to you. So that is on the table. Typically, I always just think of this as like a handheld only, even though these things are absolute monsters and probably better than most everyone's PC anyway. So yeah, there is
Yeah.
that.
Uh, Zero X Autumn writes, and it says, "Hello, Tom and Phawx. Why do you think we have not seen more AI Max 385 products? Are AMD's yields really that good? And do you think there's a market for products that fall within the gap between Strix Halo and Strix Point?" So I would jump in first and say, are their yields that good? Number one, I think the answer is yes. I mean, this is an ultra mature 4 nanometer node. People have to remember these are multiple chiplets. So the chiplet for just the graphics portion is I mean, I'm trying to think of like a comparison. It's like, I think a little bigger than like a low end graphics card, which means not that many need to be disabled down. But I think there's another thing as well. The 390 uses the same IO die yields as the 385. And if they just slap 2 6-core chiplets on there, they can get away with now selling this as a 12-core APU, and they can probably get away with charging an extra $300 by adding $50 worth of silicon, And so I think the 385 is always going to remain as probably the best min-maxed for gaming, but one that there's really no incentive for AMD to make a ton of those until they have to lower Strix Halo prices over time. Like, you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. I don't really know other than, especially when I first got sampled from Asus, they sent me the 395 and the 390. They didn't have a 385 tablet. I don't even know if they still have it, but at the time when they sampled it to me, they didn't have it, and I was very interested in 385 just because of price and what it was. It is, in my mind, a far more perfect gaming APU. It's
Better
like a high
balanced.
end,
Yeah.
yeah. Especially even though yes, it is very expensive. I don't know outside of why how that all came to be, or how Strix Halo, the 395 and 390 seem to be prioritized, insofar as what I was able to
I
easily
mean, HP
more.
charged what, $6,000 for a laptop, and they sold out. So as long as you can make $6,000 laptops, I think they're going to try to.
Right, yeah. So Yeah, that's probably what it all comes down to. And like I said, not for nothing, people always, I don't want to say people always, but
Right.
like generally speaking, you would think that the lower cost version, obviously there's people that are genuinely interested in it, but the people that are buying it buy the most expensive one. And that's typically what happens. So, I mean, not outside of like, you have like 4060s and 3060s being like the most mainstream type of GPU that gets bought. But when it comes to APUs, for whatever reason, or like like, out of the SKUs that you have available, typically people buy the bigger one.
Well, and to go back to the question here, just to be clear from Chris Trish when he asked which models do we recommend, we both agree 385 is probably the best for gaming, at least in terms of how well balanced it is. I also have to say that I saw Notebook Check review the HP laptop I have for both 395 and 390, and they gave the 390 model a much better review because they were like removing a couple $1,000s in price or whatever it was to lose 15% gaming performance, and you still have 12 cores. The CPU is more than powerful enough. They found that in like a slim form factor, the heat output was they said it went from getting loud while gaming to being silent while gaming. And I can attest to that too. So to give an actual recommendation, the 395 is there for people that want the best and know they're going to use it, not even just for gaming. I mean, it has 16 cores. Like, you're going to use this for work. The 390 is probably the most balanced enthusiast part if you're trying to stay below 75 watts. And then the 385 is for obviously gaming. I have to say, I will bring this up. I don't know if you've seen the 380. I actually kind of wanted to test one of those, but I could never find one in a package that I thought was justifiable. Like, I use my laptop for work. It was like, okay, 3,500 once they went on sale finally for the 395. I'm not paying that. 2,500 for 64 gigabytes and OLED screen and the 390. Sure, I can justify that. And then like the 380, which is just 16 compute units and 6 cores, was $2,000 and only came with 16 gigs of RAM. And I'm like, oh, I wish it had 32 and was 1,500, because I really would want to know. I assume that still has some infinity cache. Like, how does that compare to Strix Point?
Right.
I wonder if you've wanted to get a hold of one of those to mess with that ever, because that's a question I've always had.
Yeah, there's is the 380 the one that has 128-bit wide memory interface, but the 32 megabytes of mall cache on it?
So that's the thing. Yes to the bus width. I don't actually know how much mall cache. I can't figure it out online. They don't. It's not obvious to me, right?
Right. Yeah. So I'm aware of this existing, and yes, I would love to get my hands on it, but it's like I've never found a
Right.
way that. Yeah. So
Like,
it's
if you
very.
have to pay 2,000, are you going to do that? No.
No, yeah, it won't, it would never pay for me, and it'd be like a weirdo thing to like get a hold of. I would rather pay for the 385 for to like GPD. I just like, pay them and
Mhm.
get it, rather than trying to track down something else for just a small sample set, and who knows what would really happen from it. So I'm aware of it, but no, I never really went far to try to get it.
So, all right. I want to ask this question directly, since you're one of the first people to have tested the GPD Win 5 with Strix Halo. I'm fully interested in this thing. I think it's actually a pretty cool design. What's good about it? What impresses you? Maybe what doesn't? And just how would you describe the GPD Win 5, and what would be your, like, if you don't mind, like, your 1 minute review? Because I really am curious.
So the GPD Win 5, there's a few people that really love the type of included keyboard designs that GPD typically has on their devices. This is going to be the first Win series that does not have an included keyboard in there. So there's a lot of people that are pretty upset about it. I tend to agree, but it's more of a nitpick area. Generally speaking, everything that they've included in there, I really love the design. All of the parts, including the display, are, like as the Asus LIX or the Ally has the same display. I was at initially really concerned about the backpack battery design, where the battery was clipped onto the back. I was really concerned about weight distribution and all the other, like just how it would be in practice. And I have to
Me
say that
too.
I'm
And if I might, and I know everyone's going to get mad at me in the comments for cutting you off, but I have to ask here. Don't you think with the battery pack thing, half of the issue is how they described it? They said they're making a handheld without a battery, and that to me just sounds bad. And then when you see it, it's like, it does have a battery, and in fact, it's smaller than the ROG Ally, isn't it? I mean, even with the battery, it's
Yeah,
not that big. It's not too bulky to have a battery. It's just kind of a more innovative way to do it. I don't know why they don't just call it a swappable battery instead of
right.
calling it a not included battery or something.
Yeah, so it does have the battery included. Like you do get the
Exactly.
battery when you get it. Yeah, it just clips on, or there's like a wire that you can have like an umbilical cord, kind of like the Vision Pro, Apple Vision Pro power situation. And the weight distribution is honestly very good. I prefer playing with the backpack on rather than off. That's me specifically, but like even the weight distribution, I found to be not a problem at all. When you take off the battery and just like you either have the barrel jack that's plugged in, or you do that umbilical cord, it honestly feels comically light. Like it feels like nothing's in it. So it's for people that do play plugged in, and a number of people have told me about this. I think they're going to be really happy with, like, if they want something that's super light, still kind of handheld like, because it's a 7-inch screen. And I know there's actually a lot of people that wished it was an 8-inch screen, but now OneNet is making a 8-inch Strix Halo handheld,
Mhm.
their Apex. So there's options that are coming down the line, but for what it is, I really love the GPD Win 5. They included newer analog sticks, which are much better than their previous designs. Overall, an excellent handheld. The only thing that I would say that I don't like about it right now is that the fan control is software only right now. So it has this default profile that is typically aggressive. So it will try to ramp
Mhm.
up fan speeds to cool it down, but it's way too aggressive. Like it's trying to keep things down in like the 60 to 70 degree Celsius area. And I found that, like, I could run it at 32 watt and just force the fans at 30%. And the fans are pretty much inaudible there. And 32 watt is a nice experience, and still in a handheld fashion. I wish that I could set that in the BIOS as a hardware fan curve, even if the fan curve had like guardrails. Like, obviously, you don't want to allow someone to say, if it's 90 degrees Celsius, put the fan at 0%. You'll just
Yeah.
kill, you want to put guardrails that it doesn't kill the chip. I just feel like it could be a little bit less aggressive and try to be a little bit more quiet, because once you start going up to 50 watt and 70 watt, this thing's loud. So that is where, like, I mean, obviously it's expensive, but just in terms of like, where does this get loud or where it doesn't get loud, you can manage it in software. And I just wish that you could manage that in hardware. So a nitpick, I guess, because you can still do it. It's just a software only thing. I just don't like using their software. I'd rather have agnostic approach.
Yeah, I've noticed that just in general. Like, we can agree, most laptop makers are just too aggressive with the fan when it's not in heavy use. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know why. Like, you can even see it with my laptop, which is generally very quiet. But every now and then the fan just whirs up, and I'm like, this isn't hot. Like, what are you worried about? It's you would it's I'll say this though. It is so much better than it used to be 10 years ago with laptops where they were all
Yeah.
awful. But I still think there's a lot of work to be done there. I mean, it sounds like, though, anyways, that you think that the Win 5 is pretty much the best handheld, though, and not just
Oh,
because it's fastest. It's the best handheld.
yeah, so I mean, performance is there. If I was to say the best, I really enjoy using it. The D pad, that's something that I've asked GPD in like 2019, when before they made the GPD Win Max. I was like, hey, because they were using rubber membrane, and their
Mm.
implementation was not great at all. And I was like, can you guys just look at the PS Vita and try to replicate that? And ever since then, they have been, and that is still my favorite D-pad. The new analog sticks they have are absolutely fantastic. They moved over to rubber membrane based for the face buttons. The triggers are great. I love everything about it, like how it feels. Thermal thermal transference to the plastic is minimized. Like, you can't feel it in where you hold
Oh,
it at all, even at 70 watt. So like it never gets hot in your hands ever. So there's lots to love about it. I love using it. I think the only thing I did, I showed it to a coworker at work, and he uses like the middle of his thumb
hmm,
to control the right thumbstick, which
the
I
middle of it.
never do.
Hmm.
I never do myself, but I saw him doing it. And the problem was
Yeah,
that,
I
like,
think I use like kind of like right here, not the
yeah,
tip, but like right there. Yeah.
so he was using it like right in the middle of his thumb, and what was
Ooh.
happening was, as he would move to the left, the tip of his thumb was actually touching the screen, and it was touching the screen, so his character would move over to the right because it was like a mouse
Does
look.
he predominantly game on Xbox?
PlayStation.
Oh, I what? Then his thumbs would bump into. I
I
don't
did,
know.
yeah, yeah. So I just saw him doing it. And I was like, huh, I don't do that. But looking at this, I can see that, because whenever he would just push the thumbstick to the left, it would just touch on the. So if you notice that you use the middle of your thumb, I think you're going to get kind of frustrated with this a bit. So keep that in mind. But outside of that, how I use it, it's been fantastic.
That reminds me of the back touchpad on the PlayStation Vita that some people
Right.
complained about touching. I
Right.
never touched it.
Right.
This is how I hold things. So I was like, oh, I guess if you hold things, oh, I didn't know some people do that.
Yeah. So again, it's just the thing that I try to be like mindful of, and just try to communicate as best as I can, just so that no one gets caught like out of pocket and like, hey, you didn't say this. And I'm like, hey, I hold it this way. I don't know how any of you do. I try to communicate as best as I can, based on what I can see.
I'm wondering what you think about this. I'm kind of going out of order in what we're discussing, but it's kind of on the subject of form factor. So with the PlayStation 6 handheld, I've been thinking, most people would guess they'll just copy like the PlayStation Portal or something. But I have to say, even though they would be accused of copying Nintendo, having like if you could literally just like have them saw off the sides of a PS5 controller and go onto a tablet, wouldn't that be a better move than having it affixed to the screen, just so that if the controller breaks, you can replace it without having to replace your whole handheld? And if someone doesn't like the form factor, you could sell other controller sides that fit your hands better. I've wondered that a long time for handhelds, if they should all be moving towards what Nintendo does, not because we need to have a Joy Me, but just because this massively extends the life in terms of repairability and modularity.
I mean, that's an interesting. For me, I don't care one way or the other. If they do it, to
be fair, my Vita never broke. I've technically never had to deal with an analog stick breaking on a handheld. But
I guess for me, the only thing that I would care about is like I think the DualSense offers a lot, especially the haptic design of the triggers and stuff. I like that. I think that's really cool. So as long as they have all of the guts to support that, to like have a Joy-Con like thing for that, sure. But for me, I think that the PS Portal is like ugly.
I think it's ugly too. I know people that love it, but I'm just, no offense, everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think the LIX is ugly as well. Like just like how they. So I don't know.
I think the GPD actually looks really attractive. That is an attractive looking handheld.
And this is GPD's first like full on less utility, more of a super gaming focused like candy bar form factor, because typically they do like clamshells or they do something that'll have like a slide out keyboard because they're trying to add some utility to it. And this is the first time the Win series is full on gaming, and just ergonomically wise, I really love it. I it's been the first handheld that I've like super enjoyed playing because, especially because like some of the stuff that I'm playing at 1080p upscaled and with frame generation, like God of War Ragnarok, you can do with like medium to high settings. You can get like 180 FPS, and it just feels comical. Like
I know
it doesn't feel like it should be possible, and it's such a joy to play on that I find myself just getting lost. It's a fantastic. It's truly a fantastic and fun handle because it's like going into the future, right? It's using new stuff that you would not get this feeling.
It's expensive,
otherwise.
but it's like they brought alien technology that is expensive now, but will be cheaper to give you.
Yeah.
I mean, probably PS6 handheld, if not better, I'm sure in some games, performance early is what you're getting.
That's basically what it is. It's like it's like paying to time travel into the future and then just bring back this device. And yes, it's expensive, but time traveling, I think a lot of people would agree, is super expensive. And I'm not trying to say it's not expensive. I'm not trying to I get it. Not everyone should buy this or whatever. If you are dead set on just having the best, this is like for people that buy 4090s and 5090s, right? Like it's for that customer. And I get it. It's not for everyone. And we have to wait until RDNA 5 or whatever comes out. It's like 2027 or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is here now. This piece of content is brought to you by CDkeyoffer.com. CDkeyoffer.com is really the best place to go to get reasonable pricing on Microsoft software, whether that's Windows 11 operating systems or Office products like the ones that I installed on this new Strix Halo laptop that I was testing while I made this ad. You see, I actually use CDkeyoffer.com. I've used them many times. My family members use them. My friends use them when they're building new PCs, and that's because they've been a reliable sponsor of Moore's Law is Dead for years now. And so if you're looking to get, say, a new laptop, or you just finally want to get a legitimate key of one of the latest Office products on your desktop during back to school, use CDkeyoffer.com's offer codes Broken Silicon to save 25% on all Microsoft products. And then actually you can also use offer code DieShrink to save 3% on everything else on their website, like games as well. Once again, I want to thank CDkeyoffer.com for sponsoring this content, like all the other content that they've sponsored, and for making it easy for me to get a good price on Office on my new laptop. Carbon Cry writes in, hi y'all. How much better would GPD Win 5 be if the battery packs were actually hot swappable, like a tiny battery in there that lasted 5 minutes so you could drop it and put another one on? And also a more substantive question, GPD advertises Reside on Win 5. Have you tested that? If so, how does the Linux experience compare to Windows? And just in general, do you think the Windows experience on the Win 5 is a negative versus like the Steam Deck or not?
Okay, so the internal battery to like have a hot swappable one, I think that's going to be rather difficult because GPD has relayed to me that they need to be able to endure spikes of you need what is it? It's 20 volt at 7 amps. You need to be able to cover for. So having a small battery, you would need to have like a big like I don't know like a almost like an 8S. Like you need like a lot of tiny little batteries that had super high. It'd be like capacitors that you need at that point just to like
Well,
do
this is
this.
common with compact, powerful devices. I remember the Fury Nano, technically could only use like 150, 200 watts on average. But it was this massive die with HBM that would have these spikes. It still required like a 750 watt power supply or something ridiculous.
Yeah, so it's an interesting idea. I'm sure it could be designed around. I just don't know like how hot swappable do you really want this thing to be? Like, is it like a minute of like drilling this thing at 70 watt, which is like 100 watt that you're going to be pulling from this thing? Like, and then what happens with Windows? Like, if you have this tiny little battery that could, is that a part of the BMC? Is it outside of the BMC? Does it? How does Windows treat this? Does Windows say, "Oh my God, I have 0% battery," and does Windows just shut down? Like, how do you really handle this? I don't know. It's like there answers a lot of questions. Could be pretty hacky. I don't know how well that would work out in
Like, because at a
practice.
certain point, you would need a high capacity voltage battery, anyways. And how
Yeah,
many of those are made this big? None. So you,
yeah,
you really can't do it.
yeah, yeah, and like if you went from like I don't know like 5% battery, like at some point Windows is just going to be like, I'm going to sleep or I'm turning off. And how do so just in that hot swap motion, you might find that you're already in a bad spot. I don't. It's a difficult problem. Maybe it could be solved, but I don't know how you get there. There was another question that was added on top of there.
Like how is the experience as well with like Bazite
Oh,
and in general? Is that I haven't heard you bring up using Windows, and obviously a big focus of the Ally X is the Xbox Ally X is going to be their new version of Windows that tries to compete with SteamOS. Like, how important is that? I mean, I know everyone and their moms reasonably said that it was an incredibly big problem with handhelds a few years ago. Is it still a big one? Like, would you just run SteamOS on the Win 5, or what would you do?
so yeah, for Bazite, I have not done it yet on Win 5. I do plan to do that after I do this initial large review that I'm doing. It's pretty extensive. I'm comparing it to the Steam Deck, Ally X, and the MSI Claw with Lunar Lake. And I'm doing that in 720p and 1080p across a lot of different wattages. So it's going to be a really long thing. And then I'm doing thermal tests without the battery, with the battery. It's just a lot of data that I'm covering. And it's taking over a week right now to finish this. So after I'm done with that video, I will be doing a Bazite video on Win 5. And then after that, I'll be doing Xbox Ally and Ally X stuff.
Right.
So that is like my schedule at the current moment. So I will look at it now as it applies to like Windows. Mostly, I'm fine. There, I did run into a small issue with Returnal, and when I did my tests, I noticed that I had some weird 1 percentile and 0.2 percentile um, data, and it turned out that the clock limit and the EPP settings got overwritten somewhere, and I got just absolutely terrible performance. So yeah, it's Windows can be a problem. Windows can still be a problem, and if you don't know how to navigate that, this is where Bazite and SteamOS kind of make things better because unfortunately Windows is just not doing a good enough job with being a power czar. for the operating system, like just saying, hey, AMD, Intel, Nvidia, we don't care about what you guys are going to do. We're going to now govern this far better than you guys have been doing it because you don't care. AMD with the HX370 was a problem initially. I did a video
Mm.
after the 2531 drivers came out, and you can look at the chipset drivers that came out. They specifically reference an update to the scheduler. So there's drivers that fix HX370 scheduling on Windows via driver. So it seems like Microsoft has basically just washed their hands of this and said, vendors, you take care of it. So
Mm.
on the Z2E, that is on the Xbox Ally X, ostensibly it should have all of this already fixed that I had covered a few months ago, so that basically if you play like an indie game, power should scale down automatically without you having to go and say, hey, run this at 3 watt, put this at 5 watt. You should not have to do that. um, but that doesn't mean that the Xbox full screen experience does this automatically, vanilla like. If a vendor doesn't handle this, it doesn't look like it's going to be handled automatically, even though you do and can see RAM um, resources free up. So I have like already done like a video on the Claw, getting around 1.1 to 1.5 gigs of freed RAM. So there's resources that are freed up and things that aren't running, but largely it doesn't do anything. You're not going to get those power efficiency things because it's not baked in.
So, okay, let me see here. Zero X Autumn writes in and says, hello, Tom and Phawx. For one reason or another, people tend to focus on high fidelity, often single player story mode games when discussing the gaming performance of Strix Halo, or well, probably any device that they test. Something I have not seen discussed as much is the performance in competitive titles, which are very popular nowadays, especially among budget gamers. From the limited examples I've seen so far, this seems to be its weak point in gaming. With performance often only being slightly better than Strix Point, do you think any changes to AMD's design philosophy for Medusa, Halo, or even more broadly, any upcoming APU designs are going to address this market segment? So I can only speak for myself in that I've gamed, the HP laptop, it's not like an 80-watt one. It is limited, generally speaking, to 65 watts. And with the 390, I was playing Call of Duty online at 120 frames per second at high resolution. So my experience of Strix Halo is just a beast. But I did you see any issues of like playing online? Like, and I played Battlefield 6 online too. I had no problem playing that at like 80 frames a second.
No, so I typically will only do single player, but that's just because I can do it at my own pace, like at
Right.
my own time, and also I can kind of across different devices align things a lot easier, so that I can get a comparison better. For competitive gaming, the one benefit that Strix Halo has, especially the 395, it'll cut off a whole CCD and you'll just go to 8 cores anyway, and it will the frequency that those CPUs can ramp up to is ridiculous. So even if you were to do low resolution, make it a CPU bound problem,
Mm-hmm.
those CPUs can clock exceedingly high and chew through, like you can get exceedingly high frame rate on this without really struggling too much or much configuration. Only thing you have to do really is just go to lower resolutions. So you just want to try to balance it, right? Because you only have so much that you can do on the GPU. So if you make it more of a CPU bound problem instead of a GPU bound problem, if your desire is high frame rate, just make it a CPU bound problem, and the system, put 80 watts into it, and you will see it deliver.
Yeah, the CPU in Strix Halo is actually kind of fascinating. It seems like a half step almost to like some of the low latency initiatives they're doing with Zen 6. It's not the same thing. Zen 6 will have a low latency die. It's an entirely different underneath it to connect them. It's an entirely different thing, really. But AMD's openly said that they are not using chiplets that would work on desktop or server with Strix Halo. It is a new chiplet with a new low latency. Like some benchmarks, it outperforms Zen 5 standard by like a ridiculous amount if it's latency sensitive. And what I'm getting to is, and I think I saw Hayil say this as well, like he tested Strix Halo and he found it was like running all of his professional apps better than a desktop Zen 5. I mean, it's an exceptionally powerful CPU. That's not what's going to hold you back. If honestly, it's unless it's for AI, it is kind of too powerful for the GPU that it has,
Yeah,
if you ask me.
that's been our problem like forever with these APUs, is that we just have so much CPU that it's kind of like crazy. We need, not for nothing, when you have 40 CUs at 2.9 gigahertz, even 256 bit wide memory, even with the 32 megabytes of mole cache, we do need more bandwidth to satisfy that 2.9 gigahertz at 40 CUs. We are still bandwidth constrained. When you go to like higher resolutions and higher graphical settings, typically I'm gonna top out at around 40 watt, 50 watt. You're gonna start seeing massive diminishing returns at that power envelope, even though we can go up to 120 watt. And the GPUs will use that power, but you're going to see performance flatline. So if we had more bandwidth, we could actually, see even better performance, but we don't have that bandwidth. But again, that's the same thing, right? HX370 Z2E, 16 CUs at 2.9 gigahertz and 120 bit megabit
And
memory
no
address.
no infinity cache too.
Yeah, so it's like, again, this is like things where it's like, oh yeah, we have 8 teraflop of compute, and it's just like, well, you're not gonna get
Maybe
that.
for video editing, not necessarily for gaming, because it doesn't
Yeah,
have the bandwidth.
like if you're looking at things that could either have that data set cached so that it's not like, or it's just can crunch on it, where you can load it in and just crunch on it, then of course you can extract that compute. But if you have like this interactivity where you need this flow of data coming in, that your bottleneck is that. And there's like a funny uh, image I put out a while ago. It's SpongeBob with like two huge arms. They inflated his arms, and he
Hmm.
has like his mouth is going to a straw. So I have like CPU and GPU, and his mouth is the memory bandwidth. And that's how I just feel with these things. It's just like they're purposefully not giving us that bandwidth that would just take these things to another level, which is a bit unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Okay, yeah. And so let me transition to the next questions then, because this gets into the future. And I think this is something AMD's finally going to be trying to solve, because up until now, and this is something I've tried to explain to people over and over, is like the reason AMD does these APUs, where I mean the worst offender arguably was like Renoir and Cezanne with like 8 full cores and then only 8 Vega compute units that are way underpowered. I mean, you look at the die of like Cezanne or Renoir and you can see the iGPU portions like this tiny little box next to all this other stuff. And the reason I think is because the way they look at it is if it's going to be a budget laptop, it's going to be cut down. So then it'll be like 6 cores plus 8 compute units back then. And if it's going to be an expensive laptop, it's almost always paired with a dedicated GPU anyways. And so why waste die space on graphics that probably aren't going to be used? But I think the answer to that is eventually they will have the money to just have more modularity. But I wonder what you think, because AI in charge of Xbox pricing writes in and says, if Strix Halo is the Zen 1 for APUs, what do you think AMD will need to do with the successor to be a Zen 2 moment? And that's my answer. More options, more modularity, and more economy of scale, because they have all the building blocks now to build the Zen 2 moment, I think.
Right. So the successor for me, and this is like, I've heard this was on and then off, and I have no idea
Mm-hmm.
what is going on. I saw Medusa Halo having, RDNA 5, 384 megabit
Mm-hmm.
memory controller. Then it was 256 bit, and then Medusa Halo wasn't coming out at all. No, it's back on, and
It's
I
coming
don't know.
out. Let me just jump in. It is coming out.
Okay,
It's coming out.
it does it have RDNA 5? Like
Yes.
okay, so if it's RDNA 5 with 384 megabit memory controller, is that LPDDR6? Is
Right.
it
Yeah. Let me explain that. So yeah, this was something that, and there was a bit all over the place, and it's because it was a little confusing. I mean, my original Medusa, not Halo, Medusa point leak was like, I've got this weird thing, and it's a chiplet that seems to have, is this 8 cores, 8 compute units, but then there's only one CCD. Why is that? And eventually it was made clear to me, and I know someone else leaked this too, without, I think the follow up explanation is this is their way to kind of balance this without wasting silicon. Like I said before, you have an IO die with like 10 cores, 2 of them are low power. So this is a little weaker than Strix Point, relatively speaking. Probably stronger because it's a better architecture, but for the time, weaker. And then it also has like 8 RDNA, we'll find out what this one is, compute units on there. But so yeah, like 8 big, 4 big, 4 little, 2 low power cores, 8 CUs. That sounds more balanced than what they've been doing recently. And that's for the budget laptops, or I guess they'll probably still call them premium, right? They call everything premium now. But then the truly premium ones, they can add a 12 core CCD so that it's like a 22 core if you're going to also add dedicated graphics. You see what I mean? So the laptop starts 10 cores, 8 compute units, add a CCD and dedicated graphics if you need to. But if you're not adding dedicated graphics, you probably don't need that powerful of a CPU. And so that was very confusing. That's what Medusa Point is. Now, Medusa Halo, I always heard was 48 compute units. And I don't know why some people have said it's not coming out. It is definitely coming out. I mean, I have pictures of it. But it was originally, they weren't sure. It is going to be RDNA 5, 48 compute units of that. And the confusion about 256-bit and 384-bit is it has a 256-bit LPDDR5X memory controller, so you can drop it into the existing Strix Halo socket. But then
Uh-huh.
there's a new socket that
Oh,
can utilize 384-bit LPDDR6.
I
So
gotcha.
on the new socket, I mean, we're talking we're
So
talking like double the bandwidth of Strix
I gotcha.
Halo.
All right, so there's like FP11 is the LPDDR5, and then there's another socket for the LPDDR6.
Yeah, so FP12 would be the
Okay,
LPDDR6 socket.
so all right, so like in that space, right? Because LPDDR6 offers a whole bunch of cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can shut down whole channels when you go into low power. So instead of just lowering clock as your only means of like trying to balance
Oh, I
power
see.
there, yeah, so you can actually shut down channels, isolate them completely, and just power gate them. So there's lots of cool things that you can do when going down to super low power as well. So for me, that LPDDR6 one is truly like a next gen type of leap because we are going to be able to, especially having 384 megabit bandwidth of LPDDR6, whatever frequency that's running at. Now we're going to be feeding these that RDNA 5 side because the GPU is really where we've always been held back.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can just balance the CPUs like they have been, where we can kind of, is like the 395, a lot of times when it notices that a game is running or that the GPU is active and fairly active, it will shut down CCD1 and only CCD0 is online. So it does a lot of power saving things automatically, especially when going to low power. So you're going to find that this thing potentially, especially going to RDNA 5 with more memory bandwidth, this thing is going to leave Strix Halo in the dust. Like real bad. So that's the only thing that I would say is like, how fast is this going to come out? I have no idea. But if it was to like be like next year, late next year,
Oh,
early
I think it's
2027,
2027. You know, just like Strix Halo came out long after Strix Point. I think this one's
right?
going to be probably
So
CES 27.
that is like to me like the GPD Win 5 2027 edition is going to be the absolute like crazy monster that no one is anticipating because you I could show you benchmarks right now and you know you're like, oh, how much better can 30 watt, if you have the Ally X at 30 watt, how much better is
Mm-hmm.
on a GPU bound game at 50 watt? And it's like, oh, it's three times better, and that's today. And like you look at that, it's going to be comically better. So yeah, I think Zen 1 Zen 2 is good. It's like probably a far greater difference is what I think, especially going to LPDR6. That is going to be its own secret sauce that I'm like really looking forward to, that I haven't been able to test at all, because LPDDR5, like how AMD handles it kind of dumb on the memory controller. They basically interpolate the frequency, so they average it out when you're at like 10 watt, 15 watt. It basically modulates the memory clock at like, it'll go like 500, 800, 1000, 500, and it'll kind of just like oscillate this frequency to kind of balance power instead of just saying, hey, what is the actual clock I should be putting the memory controller at, and then thus the memory, because it shares a clock domain, right? So whatever the memory controller on Encore is running at, that's what the memory is running at. So, and that's where you get those power savings, right? Because Encore is going to be taking power commensurate to the frequency that it's running at, as the memory is. So what you really want to do, and not what AMD is doing, is kind of just say, okay, I'm at 15 watt, let's run at 534 megahertz and just try to min max the voltage there. And we saw this with Hawk Point 8840U. There were some enhancements that,
Yeah.
yeah, that AMD had done. So I still think that there's work to be done. And for LPDDR6, like I said, we can shut down whole channels and then just there's a lot of cool stuff that we can do with LPDR stuff, LPDR6, that I have not yet been able to test or muck around with. But yeah, I feel like that if that were to materialize, that is going to be crazy, crazy monstrous.
Well, so this is what will probably excite you too, like feeding into the idea of like a Zen 2 moment. Zen 2 was when AMD really, really, really used chiplets in a way that I think surprised or at least impressed a lot of people for the first time. That wasn't just there's multiple of the same CPU. We literally have specialized things. Like so there's Medusa Halo Mini and then Medusa Halo above that. Medusa Halo Mini and well, they both do this. They share a GPU chiplet with desktop. So what's cool about
Oh,
that is people think of IO dies, and I think everyone's been assuming it's going to work how it has so far, where the way it works is you have an IO die, it has the memory controller, it has maybe a low power core, integrated graphics, and video out, and blah, 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 blah. And then you add chiplets. The way Medusa Halo is going to do things is a little different, where they're calling the GPU a memory controller die because the memory controller for the GPU is on that die.
Oh,
And so what you do on desktop is you'll take if it's Medusa Halo Mini, 24 compute unit chiplet, and then you'll just add like I don't know, 20 millimeter squared video out die. Boom. Now you have the whatever I honestly don't know if they'll call the next gen of graphics cards because they're already at 9,000, but the RPX 1060 or something like, or 150. That's what they would do with that. And that means because they're sharing that, they can on desktop, they're not beholden to GDDR6 or 7, and they could conceivably make a 128 gigabyte low end graphics card if they wanted to, and they can send all of the bad yields that require more voltage to desktop. All of the highest bins can go to laptop, which honestly
right.
on 3 nanometers is probably going to be most of them. And by the way, they also share it with Xbox. Xbox shares with the mid-range graphics card, which is awesome as well. So the economy of scale you're going to get with this, I do think is going to be like a Zen 2 moment. But I think you'll also like this. The Nvidia out die on Medusa Halo is 12 Zen 6 cores, 2 Zen 6 low power, and then you can add an optional 12 core, I believe, to get to 26 cores total. Meaning you don't need to have, you're not wasting silicon. You can have a base 10 or 12 core chip with 40 to 48 compute units, depending on if it's cut down. And they didn't waste any silicon making it a 26 core. So I imagine you'd have to agree that like 12 cores plus 48 compute units, that's going to be better balanced for gaming by
Oh
default as
yeah,
well.
yeah. I mean, it's like especially when you start looking for, whatever. I know RDNA 4 has improvements on ray tracing, and RDNA 5 is going to have that as well. And the wider that we go, we can run that at lower clocks. There's a lot to there's a lot of benefits there, insofar as being able to Lego block all of these together in various configurations. That's, I mean, the GPU, and I think is like also like there was like I remember RDNA 3 was at one point supposed to be chiplet, if I recall correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I mean, the
Uh,
APUs.
no, RDNA 3, the desktop GPU was going to be the start of where
Well, it
chiplet.
does have chiplets, but it's just a very simple design. It has 6 memory controller dies that are like, what, 32-bit each, and then a GPU chiplet in the middle. And
Right.
that's it.
Yeah, so I was always of the mind of like how they would be joining these things together in bigger and bigger packages, and I don't think that it ever really materialized in a way that I
No, and
thought were
nothing I'm seeing with RDNA 5 does that. They have memory controller dies or maybe a media out die, but the largest, as far as I can tell, and again, maybe there's something I haven't seen, but as far as I can tell, the like giant 200 compute unit monster model seems to still just be a GPU die with a video out die, not multiple little dies. It still doesn't seem like they're doing that.
I gotcha. So I mean, for me, I think that just even in like the smaller configurations, we've been so far. I'm speaking more from a handheld perspective here. We have been starved for GPU for so long that you look back to the Steam Deck is still somewhat competing in this space, even though
Yeah.
it is barely, it should not be able to keep up, in 2025, but it is. And we can complain about memory bandwidth mostly, but obviously just going, RDNA 2 and RDNA 3, there's not a large difference between these two. If you put them at the same memory bandwidth, there is no like effective gain out of there. Maybe at 1 to 2%. It's tiny. So just going to RDNA 4 and RDNA 5, these offer considerable benefits when even looking at it
I mean, yeah, it
when
could be like 50% faster per compute
yeah,
unit. I mean,
exactly. Yeah, when you factor
maybe
in,
double, triple with ray tracing. I mean,
oh yeah, no matter which way you look at this, right? Like RDNA 4, if you take a look at the 9070 XT and the amount of bandwidth it has versus the 7900 XT,
XTX or
yeah,
either
yeah,
or really, but
yeah,
yeah.
you can see how much more bandwidth the 7900 does have over the 9700 XT, and the 9700 XT keeps up with whichever one it is. But I mean, like, you can see that it's like 20% less bandwidth and it's still keeping up. And it's like, oh, wow, that is a considerable improvement on bandwidth alone. And that's RDNA 4, and we don't even know where RDNA 5 is going to be. So it's like, just from that angle, it's going to be leaps and bounds better. And then if we can get more bandwidth and faster, it's something that we've sorely needed for a long time now outside of ray tracing. And with the ray tracing improvements, I think altogether like also an FSR4 or maybe FSR5 or whatever they're going to call it with Redstone and everything else. Who knows? But it's going to be like
Mm.
by the time 2027 comes around, it's going to be a comical difference, even on the low end. So if we just like, I am just excited for that. But if we get to like the whole Lego block thing, and I've seen the rumors of like Magnus, that's the Xbox chip, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, and the potential of what that's going to do. And if we think about the Lego block nature of that,
Like
if that was,
literally sharing chiplets with desktop GPUs, what that will do for like driver support and stuff, I think
yeah,
is
so
awesome.
there, yeah, it's an interesting moment to say the least, and it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I ended up pulling the trigger on Strix Halo. That was one of my that I keep saying this, of all the leaks I did in 22 when I saw the diagram of Strix Halo, I was like, finally, they are making a big APU. And I was
Right.
like, well, they got all this other stuff coming out. Maybe I shouldn't get Strix Halo. But when I've seen where they're going with like 2027 and 2028, I'm like, I'll just pull the trigger now because I'm not going to want to get anything probably in 26 when I know, unless it's one of these products that happens to come out in 26, because of how. And then I think Intel's going to be doing some pretty crazy stuff by then. Hopefully, finally with Nvidia as well. I think yeah, I think people are going to have to hold on to their seats here because I think Lisa Sue's going to come out in CES next year, and they're going. And it won't be out yet, but she's going to be like, "This is the Zen 2 moment of APUs, everybody," and she'll like at least tease it. And then you're going to have Nvidia making tiles for Intel, and I just think, yeah, I think Strix Halo gives you the future early, but
It does.
I think what you're going to see in 27 is like the benefits of Strix Halo are going to be like in all of AMD's products, and they're all going to be way stronger than people thought they'd be.
Yeah, it's going to be a comical difference, even though Strix Halo is comical compared to what we have now. Yeah, it's like that. So it's exciting times to say the least, but it's like frustratingly far away.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's always not quite, and it feels farther away than it probably is just because I think we've been wishing this would have happened 2 years ago.
Yeah,
Like right when we saw chiplets from AMD, we're like, when are they going to make a big APU? You know?
yeah, it's I mean HX370 doesn't make a bunch of sense for a handheld insofar as
Hmm.
pricing and what you get out of it. And the 385, like we already talked about, with like how little that costs compared to the HX370, it's like, well, why wouldn't I just get the 385? Like that's just a way better option for me. Um, so it's I don't know. I'm glad that this is finally here. I'm glad that Strix Halo is coming into handhelds. I felt like this has always been the case, and I've known that we could take a low power for I'm confident that we can always take these things far lower than people anticipate, and I'm glad that we've been able to finally demonstrate that. So it's good times, and at the current moment, I'm happy because I get to play around with something that finally feels like I have that desire for power and performance that I've been waiting for years now.
Old King Maple writes in and says, with the Xbox Ally X using Z2 Extreme, how much faster can we expect a Z3 Extreme to be with RDNA 5? Surely it's going to go from 8 to 12 cores or more. Well, it's like, well, I mean, I have it pulled up. I assume what they will do is there will be a Z3 normal that uses like the Medusa point without the extra chiplet, so just 8 compute units probably. But it'll be a faster than the 8 compute units in the existing one with RDNA 2. And then I would have to assume the extreme is going to be Medusa Halo Mini, which without adding a chiplet goes up to 14 cores and 24 compute units. And what RDNA 4 is like twice as fast as RDNA 3 at ray tracing, 50% or something per compute, 40% per compute unit. So, I mean, I would just say do the math. You've got 50% more cores than the Z2 Extreme. You've got each of those cores for compute, and the graphics card is probably 50% faster. I mean, I think the Z3 Extreme is going to be at least twice as fast as the Z2 Extreme. I think it's going to be the
Yeah.
biggest uplift we've seen in a while.
Oh, yeah, and largely, yeah, for RDNA 5, also the memory controller, the memory improvements that we get, or the IPC that we get, insofar as like compute versus how much bandwidth is necessary to actually get
Now,
work
Halo
done.
Mini still is only 128-bit. That's the only thing I will tell you. They'll have faster RAM by them, but it should have like significantly more L2 cache than
Right. So,
this
like,
Strix
at the very
point.
least, we know that RDNA 4 is ostensibly 20% better insofar as bandwidth. Um,
Sure.
so RDNA 5, whatever that is, if it's another 20%, let's just say hypothetically, we're going to be 45, 50% better insofar as given memory bandwidth, what we can get per compute.
I should probably interrupt you to bring this up too, because I don't know if you've noticed this. They don't have Infinity Cache in RDNA 5.
Oh, interesting.
They
I did
just
not know that.
and so it's like I don't know what black magic they're doing here. Now, to be fair, they do have significantly more L2, but it's not as much as like Lovelace or Blackwell. It's not like 96 megabytes. It's like Medusa Halo is 20 megabytes of L2, which you think 32 megabytes of L3 for Strix Halo, and then consider this as double the bandwidth from the RAM. That doesn't sound that crazy, but I think that's worth pointing out as well that, like, for example, what is big RDNA 5? Big RDNA 5, I believe the gaming model goes up to like, let me see if I should probably just pull it up to make sure I know what I'm talking about here. You'll probably laugh. The RDNA 5 leak I did was originally titled Magnus Follow Up. And then it turned into quite a bit more than just being talking about Magnus. 40 megabytes of L2 in the 154 compute unit model. So, and now look, that has, blazing fast GDDR7 over 384-bit bus. So it's like, obviously but I think what that tells you is there's something going on here with RDNA 5 where they think they have an ace in the hole in bandwidth.
Right. If that's the case, because that's where we've been like so like deprived of. If they could solve that part where they could feed this in a like however their the render how their stage is done, pipelining, all that other stuff. If they are properly like feeding this in a way that it's not this constant wave of bandwidth that needs to come in to feed this thing, that's exciting. And that's the thing that I feel like, we took a look at Steam Deck when RDNA 2 came out over Vega. That was 2x per watt, and that was huge, right? Because we had the Ioneo original one, right? Like that was running Renoir, and that had Vega cores, and it was just like, hey, at 15 watt versus 50 watt, Steam Deck is 2 times the performance, and that was huge. That is generational uplift. Even though when we go back to like looking at that, the Steam Deck is kind of like puttering along now, especially with newer releases. That effectively the Steam Deck with RDNA 2 is the baseline of what people find acceptable for gaming
Mm-hmm.
on a handheld right now. So we are it's long in the tooth, and we desperately need that fix coming in soon in 2027. It feels just like so far away.
This piece of content is brought to you by the AceMagic S3A Ryzen 8945HS mini PC. This mini PC, like many others out there, is compact, high quality, and comes with tons of DDR5 and SSD storage built in that you can upgrade yourself. But unlike most other mini PCs, you can upgrade it easier than I've ever seen before with a magnetically removable side panel, so you can get right in there and do whatever you want. But then also it has another cool feature, a performance knob that you literally turn like a little analog knob from an old car, and it can go from low power with a silent fan noise to bounce to high power. And as you can see with me testing this here with Deep Rock Galactic, it does work. If you want it to be silent while you're working, it'll be silent. If you want to turn it up and play Deep Rock Galactic and like 4K 60 with upscaling on, you can. And I was actually impressed how well this Hawkpoint APU in this specific package ran this game, and I found that it could run basically any AAA game out there, at least like 1080p 60 pretty much, with a mix of reasonable settings. So this, for the APU it has, punches a bit above its weight, and because of all of its cool features, I have to say that I recommend it as a really cool option. If you're interested in this product, make sure that you check it out through the links in the description. Clicking on those links helps the channel a ton, and it also gets you access to the best pricing on this product. Again, support Moore's Law is Dead by checking out the AceMagic S3A Ryzen 8945HS mini PC today. Carbon Cry writes in, why do you think Microsoft did a Nintendo and chose to use Van Gogh to power the Ally Non-X?
Cost.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. They probably got some sweetheart deal on it, would be my guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, what is it, 6 nanometer, 7 nanometer? What node is
I
it?
assume they shrunk it to 6 eventually, so I assume they're using the 6 nanometer version.
Right. So, but I mean, like cost reasons wise, like 6 going to be far more.
And I think it's like 130 millimeters squared, so it's like half the die size of Strix Point while using a 6 nanometer instead of 4. I mean,
Yeah,
that's a lot cheaper.
yeah, it's literally just a cost thing. That's the only reason that makes any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, it would even almost make more sense to use like a, what is it, like Little Hawk Point. I mean, it wouldn't. It's only 4 compute units, but or like Kraken would make more sense. Like, it would
Yeah.
be vastly better. But I want to get into this though. Like, so I have quite mixed opinions on the ROG Xbox Ally X. I
Hmm.
think from a PC perspective, it's like, okay, but there's a $1,000 gaming handheld. I think the GPD looks much more interesting because if you have $1,000, you probably have $1,400 or $1,600. And if you want something cheap, I just get a Steam Deck is kind of my opinion. I mean, it's
Yeah.
$300, $320 now, and it just works. Um, so from a PC perspective, it's in the lineup, and I hope it brings better. I hope it brings a SteamOS experience to PC that propagates over time, and PC gaming becomes better. As a PC gamer, I love what they're doing with the Xbox Ally X. From an Xbox perspective, I wouldn't be happy if I was an Xbox fan. But I mean, I know you've had a hands on with it. Like, what do you think of it?
So there are, insofar as the UI and UX and making a game controller as a first class input, the APIs that they have been developing to cater to handheld specifically, even though that's going to need developer input. But you have like being aware of DPI, so you can scale fonts automatically if it's going to be go handheld. If you dock that handheld, it goes on a bigger screen. Fonts will change, UI changes. So all of this stuff that they're doing, the downloadable shader cache that they're going to be doing for Xbox Ally and Xbox Ally X, which is going to be just for the Xbox app and those games, you can actually download those shaders for them. Outside of that, as a more agnostic approach, that they can have an API that game developers can use to, instead of compile shaders, you can just reach out to a cloud provider and pull in those shaders and download them for the platform
Hmm,
that you're using.
interesting.
um, there's interesting approaches that they're trying to kind of have their cake and eat it too, where they're saying, okay, Xbox Ally and Xbox Ally X are our bread and butter. We're going to try to make this as a Steam Deck like experience as possible, and they're going to get there on the Xbox app side of things, and then also at the same time introduce all these API layers that requires developer input to kind of streamline it across other launchers. Like if you have Steam, if you're having Epic, you would still be able to download shaders and you still be able to have those APIs for handhelds, even if it isn't on an Xbox thing. So they're doing a lot of work, and moving around and using like their Xbox tab, the Alt tab thing is lightning fast. It's fun to use.
Hmm,
I had a buddy put in the leaked Xbox full screen experience, and he was actually alt tabbing quickly between multiple games that were running.
hmm,
So he was just like rifling through them. They were all in RAM, so it wasn't like it was like quick resume like how Xbox is, but it was like quick resume like, but it was just stored in RAM, like it's hot. But it's fast. It's fast, and it reduces a lot of. It doesn't use as many resources. The Xbox, the Windows desktop is not loaded until you load that Windows desktop, and then at that point it is loaded. So going back to the Xbox full screen experience, no longer frees up those resources. So there's things that they're doing that is super cool, and I think they've done a lot. I still think that they have a lot more to do, especially with really controlling clocks on system and targeting frame rates.
hmm.
And I think that they could really, especially from the handheld scene, take it to the next level, but they seem hands off on it. So I'm a little bit mixed on it overall. I think that it's a fantastic first step with what they've done and what they've implemented and like the newer APIs that are coming out. It is like a great, like it's very mindful, and they're kind of dotting their i's and crossing their t's in a lot of areas. I still think it can be better, and I think initially it's going to be. I think it's going to be fine, especially with how fluid it is. But I don't know. There's the whole Xbox part of it, right? Like
Hmm.
I think people are going to get a bit of whiplash, and they're like, "Hey, I own this game on Xbox. Why don't I have it here?" It's like,
Yeah, I've
well, it's
been
not
very
play anywhere.
outspoken about that, and I've seen some people poo-poo it, but I'm like, I know console gamers, man. I know there's going to be people that buy this and are going to
Yeah,
be surprised that it does not run one game they have or something.
yeah. So I'm kind of mixed on it overall. I think that the great thing is that they have done a lot, and truly for me, just the Xbox as a first Xbox, the control using a controller as a first class input, in meaning so far as like you can
I see.
navigate.
You see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the one thing that they don't do and they haven't done yet, and they told me that they're going to wait on, is like they are relying on OEMs vendors to make game bar extensions to have like mouse emulation. So like if you go to the desktop, how do you control the desktop with a controller if you don't have a mouse and keyboard?
Hmm.
And like they make their own mouse emulation. So I was like, why doesn't Microsoft just have an agnostic approach where you don't need an OEM? So like you can figure out how to navigate Windows desktop with a controller. And I feel like that's still not fully baked out, and that's something that they have
I
to.
like that as an initiative, though. It's long overdue for
Yeah,
Windows handhelds to be able to use it. I mean, really, they probably should have done this since Xbox 360 input was
yeah,
ubiquitous on PC. I mean, why not let you control Windows fully with an Xbox controller?
yeah. I think the most damning thing is that Android since 2.3 version 2.3 has supported controller input to like navigate Android. So that like Android 2.3, like that's how far back Android supported full controller support as an input device to navigate. And we are just now getting on Windows when they've supported pen input, voice input, like all these other
All
things.
these things, yeah.
Yeah, but like, how could you have a user access control that pops up and say, "Hey, this security thing, do you want to do it? Yes or no?" and not allow a controller to say yes or no? It's like, oh, I have to plug in a mouse and a keyboard now because now I don't have that input. And it's just like it's a really that is now there and it's solved, but it took so long to get here that it's just like, what were you guys doing? Like, I don't know. I'm glad it's here. So that being said, I'm glad that the first step is there.
It's interesting. I wasn't sure what to expect from your opinion, but it sounds like we kind of agree, actually, that it's a good step forward for just making Windows work better overall. But you don't see this iteration itself as the next big thing in handhelds compared to like GPD
No,
or Switch 2 or PlayStation 6 handheld.
Yeah, yeah, like like Dave 2D made a video where he had the Lenovo Legion Go S, the cheaper
The new one
model.
looks interesting too.
Yeah, so the S model, it finally SteamOS finally came out for it, and the title of his videos was "Windows was the problem all along," and he showed that SteamOS was just destroying it in performance and efficiency. And I made a quick follow video, and Dave 2D is correct here. I'm not trying to say that he wasn't correct, but the problem is just how Windows is governing these clocks. And I was just like, look here, I did it again. And when we looked at the Xbox full screen experience, I put it on the MSI Claw. And I was like, look, here's Silksong running. It's taking 20 watts total power. Oh, here's what happens when I lower CPU clocks. Oh, it now takes 10 watts of total system power and I get the same frame rate. Why do I have to do this? Why do I have to step in and say, CPUs, calm down, to run at a lower frequency? You do not need to be going this high. And, I'm still getting 120 FPS. So that's something that the Xbox full screen experience still does not do automatically. And SteamOS, Linux, will have a far easier path to doing because the governors and the schedulers are just there's a lot more work that has been done from the server end to get the most efficiency out of these CPUs, and Linux is paying dividends in this area.
So I'm gonna ask this. I actually didn't get any reader mails or submissions from listeners for this subject, kind of surprisingly. But I guess I probably talked this to death in my content last month. But I am very curious what you think of this in general, though. For the PlayStation 6 handheld, I mean, maybe you just have 10 seconds of stuff to say about it. But I wonder, like, were you excited when you? I think we talked about it a little bit last time you were on, but like now we basically know the full specs. It looks like they're kind of aiming for PS5 backwards compatibility and low power mode, but then forward it probably will run games better than PS5. And I try to explain this to people too, like when they're like, how will this hold back the PS6? And I'm like, well, if it has enough RAM, 4K 120 is 8 times the pixels a second of 1080p 60. And so I think as long as they have a similar amount of RAM, I think it'll probably be fine. And I think it's very exciting to think of a portable handheld that aims for clearly around 10 watts or less that can run all PlayStation games going back to PS4. But what do you think? I mean, I'm actually kind of more excited about this than another PlayStation home console. Are you excited? And do you think there's anything interesting or red flags or green flags about it?
Yeah, I'm super excited about it. I'm like pumped about this specifically. I think that you look at the PS5 firmware update that has the low power mode that has been pushed out there, and it's like, well, that's curious. Why would anyone want a low power mode?
Yeah, and
Like,
it's low power mode with weird settings. It's not like the logical underclock you would do. It's like conspicuously at a very specific level where this seems like they underclocked it more than they needed to.
yeah, it's like, hey, wouldn't you like to make your PS5 a Xbox Series S? And it's like, no, not really. Like, why do I want to do that? And yeah, so it's interesting in a lot of ways, and I think that I've argued this, and I made a video which I think 3 years ago now, that I argued that Xbox with the Xbox Series S had an easier runway, since they've been making devs make Xbox Series S versions,
Mm.
to kind of just have a Xbox handheld come out and just run the Series S versions going forward. Just like run these, and then anything new we can just kind of work forward on. And PlayStation has to kind of work backwards. They have the
Mm.
PS5 low power mode now that developers can now target to have a runway for the PS6 handheld. So it remains to be seen how well that support gets done on the PS5 side. But Sony is the market leader in like the console space, so that they have the whip to just kind of demand devs to do this. So I think that they have a better market position to do it.
It's like
And
now's the time. Now is the perfect time for them to try it again.
yeah, so it's like, hey guys, like target this. Like you should 100% make your game run inside the space, and it's going to matter. Trust us, wink, wink. And yeah, so being able to play, like, I mean, if you can play GTA 6 like on a PlayStation 6 handheld, that's gonna be dope. That's gonna be like super awesome. And I think, like, not for nothing, PlayStation won the between the Xbox and Sony war, being at war, they clearly won. And a lot of people have a huge digital ecosystem
Mm-hmm.
on PlayStation. So having a full fat PlayStation 6 handle that plays PS4, PS5 games, when they have all those games that are already there, it's like, wow, that's going to be pretty awesome. And I think like a lot of people are like, the Xbox Series S held back this generation. But when you have something that offers the convenience and utility of being a handheld, I think that care goes away. And you're like, well, I have my PS6 full fat version for, the best fidelity that I can get, but I have my PS6 handle that I really love. Also, I think like you look at it from the Switch's point of view, and I think one thing that I think Sony would like is that when consoles, even though there are people that buy multiple consoles for a household, typically I would
Mm-hmm.
say that you buy one PS5
Yes.
for the household, and you buy a Switch for an individual.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have
Oh,
three,
that's a good point.
you know what I mean? Like it, because it's a personal item. It's like an iPhone. It's like a tablet. It's your
I mean, I had
Switch.
two PSPs. I upgraded to a better one eventually.
Yeah. So yeah, you look at the unit sales of how people buy them. It's like, well, I got to get them for each one of my kid now, and it's not just one thing that they share. It's their own thing. So now sales go up. So handhelds have that advantage by far because they're considered personal items rather than a family item. And yeah, there's just lots of things that are their benefits for it. And if they can really nail this place, you look at like the evolution of PSSR, if
Mm-hmm.
it's like FSR4 or FSR5, all of these things, all the benefits that they have, even though it's like, okay, PS5 may just have some like low settings and maybe some advantages with like upscaling to really make it shine and pop, maybe for a few first party titles. Generally speaking, if they can get general support of PS5 to target this low power mode, at least they can have enough breadth to play these games on this PS6 handheld. Even if they don't rightly take advantage of any upscaling or frame gen, it could just run this like base low power PlayStation 5 spec. That still has value. And I'm generally excited for it because I don't care. I really don't care what it is. Like I'm more PC gaming focused,
Mm-hmm.
but I just care about handhelds a lot. So I like the Switch too. I'm really excited about the PS6 handheld. I would still think that Xbox should make a handheld because they have every Series S
Mm-hmm.
game, like every game that came out, Series S existed. So they have a huge runway of
Yeah.
games that is going to be far easier for them. They don't have to say anything to the devs like, oh, that work you did on Series S is going to pay dividends. Congratulations. So it's like there's lots of things that are there, and I just generally feel like a mobile centric idea of this, even though it's not like a tablet or a phone. I still like this whole initiative, and for people that are PlayStation customers through and through that have a large digital ecosystem, I'm really happy for. Like I'm genuinely happy for them. I think I would love to see, not for nothing, like Sony. I would love to see that dominant Sony from the '80s, like to get that design,
Mm.
like Sony design from the '80s and '90s, still
Like
peak in my
dominant in a
mind.
fun way, like going
Yeah,
crazy with ideas, using their position to try
yeah.
new things, not
I mean, dude,
using it to
PSP.
do nothing.
Yeah, like the PSP
Yeah.
was amazing with what they were like, UMDs and whatever, okay, but like they were pushing the envelope in a lot of interesting ways, and I still think that they had that magic of that Sony design. And you look at the PS Portal, It's like a mockery of anything that Sony
I
has done
agree.
in the past. So
People love it. They can't keep it in stock, but I think it's ugly. I'll admit
yeah,
it.
so I would love like Sony to come out guns a blazing and make this like really beautiful handheld that can play PS5 and PS4 games. I think a lot of people would love it. And I only think that like as we get to this point in 2025, like node costs are going to increase in such a way, especially if tariffs being the way they are,
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
would anticipate like
That's something to note,
550.
by the way. So a lot of people pointed out. I put out a video today, just a quick little reaction to the Xbox price, and a lot of people pointed out that in the UK, for example, or maybe it was Europe, I forgot. Would I say mainland Europe when I say Europe? Like apparently it's the same price as the previous ROG Ally there. Like it's like $799, and in
Mhm.
the US it's $200 more. So I still think $799 is a lot for something you would call a console, to be honest.
Sure.
But maybe it what isn't as expensive in other countries comparatively because of tariffs. So that is one thing to watch out for with the PS6 pricing as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. I think that there's going to be a bit of sticker shock. Like even the Steam Deck 2. I think that like the opening salvo for prices is probably going to be 600 at the low end, and I think that's going to raise as well. So I think that prices are just generally going to get higher across the board everywhere, especially as it comes to later nodes and the best stuff. So I think it's just more of things to come. And even though like Win 5 we consider super expensive, if you
Mm.
consider by 2027 what costs are going to be, you're going to look back at this time and you go, that probably wasn't as expensive as I thought it was now that I'm conditioned to the prices that I am.
Yeah, the 4090 doesn't look as expensive as it used to. It's crazy. Um, but yeah, so I wasn't planning to bring this up, but I think I want to know because it occurs to me you're someone that would probably really appreciate this because this is the type of stuff you talk about all the time with APUs. But like when I put out the initial PlayStation 6 information, it wasn't complete, and then it became complete when not more people reached out to me a month later or something. And the whole point was though, right from the get-go, when I started talking about it a few months ago, like people were blown away about like, oh well, if the handheld is like two-thirds or half the raster performance of the PS5, like how is this going to be able to run those games, and like how will this not hold back the next gen? And I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding about like why developers have complained about the Series S. And for the most part, it's there's a few things here. So first of all, someone pointed this out to me, like the PS5 can't run FSR 4. And well, I mean, we'll see. There's maybe they'll hack it on there. We saw some people do that recently with the Steam Deck to a degree, but it certainly can't run it as well as the next gen. Like there's at least a 30% deficit in performance or something. I think I saw with the Steam Deck you can only run performance mode to get more performance, and it's still kind of worth it, but it's like you're not doubling your frame rates, you're getting like 30% more. So that difference alone means a PlayStation 6 handheld that is like I think it's like 16 compute units, and each compute unit is like 50%. Well, is it 50? Yeah, like 50% faster, 60% faster than the compute units in the PS5. You're kind of already getting most of the way there. Add FSR4 on top of that. Yes, this would require the game to be patched to have full
Yes.
PS6 support, but I think it actually might. The games will probably look better than the PS5.
Right. Yeah. And this is kind of like the Switch 2 type of stuff when you do like upscaling
Yeah,
and how that can look like that's hitting way above its weight class type of thing. And I think you should expect similar things. And that's like, just even what we said just previously is just like going to be this kind of balance of this PS5 low power mode doesn't seem like it targets PSSR in any way or any upscaling. It's just saying, hey, run like you can run these games in a low power mode, and it gives the devs a target to patch their games to run in this spec outside of any upscaling. Now, it doesn't mean that the first party games that Sony has doesn't also leverage the upscaling thing, but at the very least, if they can get PS5 games and devs to target this low power mode, at the very least,
there's a
you will have some,
fallback.
yeah, there's a fallback that it can run in this space without using any of that magic. And not for nothing, but playing on a smaller display hides a lot of things. When you're not blowing things out, and you can really start seeing some, like especially for like FSR2, all the frizzle and stuff that happens around edges and stuff. It
Yeah.
becomes super apparent when you're looking at it blown up. But it's reduced a lot in a smaller screen. So there
It's
are
like what
benefits.
Killzone Mercenaries on Vita looked incredible when you were playing it, and then you see like a 1080p screenshot of it on your monitor, and you're like, ugh.
Yeah, it's quite literally like that. So, yeah, just considered from that angle, like you can also run at lower resolutions on those when it's smaller, and it hides a lot of things through just sheer size. So there's things like that that you can do it. I you know I don't really get too caught up in the whole this thing is holding back whatever.
Mm.
Um, Especially if we go with like RDNA 5 and wherever that's going to land us for the ray tracing side of things. Like you look at Doom the Dark Ages being required, like ray tracing is enabled on by default, and they had to do that for development reasons. And we're approaching this area where you can't just pre-bake a lot of lighting because the development time to do all that is just taking too long per scene. So you really need to be able to in real time do lighting, and that's going to make dev cycles smaller. And there's a lot of reasons why we need to get to this eventuality, and it's painful. It's been painful along the way. So I think this entire generation has been pretty brutal insofar as like UE5 stutter, what they're is we seem a little bit imbalanced with what's going on, and this generation does not seem to be appreciably better in terms of graphical fidelity over like what the PS4 was.
Hmm.
Like you look at God of War on the PS4, that was like whoa, that is next generation, and I don't think we had that same type of real wow moment that we have. Like Hellblade looks super realistic, and you have the UE5 and everything with like rocks. Like there's a bunch of rock formation with nanite.
Very good at showing rocks in a desert. Very good at
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. So you have that, but I don't think that we're like clearly there just yet in terms of a true next generation showing. And it's probably like the next gen that's going to get there, even on the low power side, even though it's for like the handhelds and stuff.
Yeah. And then the other aspect actually I want to bring up though about like holding things back. So I already brought up like the FSR4 argument, but like I think, and you saw this in interviews. I don't know if it was Phil Spencer or who, but I remember some Xbox interviews, them saying, we think this is the last generation. Heck, it may have been Xbox One, actually, not to my memory when they said that. They kind of thought we've got enough, and it's just higher resolutions from here. And I just think they were a generation too soon because you don't get the upscale. They missed the upscaling
Mm-hmm.
wave with RDNA 2. They missed the ray tracing wave de facto. I mean, it can do it, but just because, you can run, what was the launch game? Watch Dogs with ray tracing and like pixel mode. Like that doesn't mean that's acceptable. They missed a lot of these waves. And I think with RDNA 5, it has full compute, AI, ray tracing,
Right.
upscaling capabilities, where I think there's a better argument to be made that actually is like the start of the next 10 years of graphics.
Yeah, yeah, and I think like the big thing that will get us blindsided a bit is that we are so focused on upscaling and frame gen and temporal upscaling and that type of stuff that where does AI fit into this picture, and LLMs in real time. I have no doubt that there's fascinations that they have about actually deploying and using this. So it'll be interesting to see where things like ultimately go. I don't know how it's going to materialize, but it feels like the next generation is going to have include AI in some form or fashion. And I think AMD just wants to do it just because they see the money that's involved with having actual working AI and being competitive in that space. So I don't know. The next year and so will be interesting as we get more details coming in.
Fire Darkness 39 writes in and says Lunar Lake seems purpose built for handhelds with almost unlimited constraints,
Mm.
expensive packaging, modern nodes for only 8 cores, high graphical output, but it seems to have failed to enter the handheld market. Why do you think that it didn't make a bigger impact, and what architectural changes would you like to see in a new revision of handheld APUs in general? So I'm going to say I think releasing a Meteor Lake handheld was the biggest mistake Intel did with MSI. Like it failed, and I just think it kind of sullied the Intel handheld brand
Yeah,
out of the gate, right?
yeah, that's very fair. The problem, is I used Intel in iGPUs because that's what was in the Cherry Trail. So I was using
Mm-hmm.
gens based GPUs back in the day,
People
and
forget,
gens based.
some people act like Intel never had good APUs. They had excellent APUs with
Yeah,
Broadwell and
yeah,
Skylake and Haswell. They were excellent APUs back then.
Yeah, so they have had, and the gens based GPU, which is super old. The support that they had was solid, and you could run anything. It would run dirt slow, but it would run. And and then you went into G, and then everything kind of really fell apart. The wheels came off the wagon real fast, and they've been kind of on the back foot since then. And AMD entering into this space kind of derailed them a bunch. And like you said, Meteor Lake, I was pretty brutal on the Claw when it first came out, and I was just like showing everything that it was just really terrible. And that showing, I'm sure, did no favors. Lunar Lake, I absolutely do love as a general package because it's like the ultimate design for handhelds, especially being having a memory on package.
Mm.
Um, so there's lots of power cost considerations when you think of that. It's like when you include TDP, you have to include the memory because the memory's on package. So when you run something that 15 watt on Lunar Lake, that includes the memory. So it's like total system power is also considerably lower than what you would have on AMD because you're not including those memory power characteristics. So there's lots of things that you can really tune it and do some just really cool stuff. Also, you get like no one really considers this, but I'm like kind of like the stupid min max guy, where just having memory on package just means memory is a little bit closer to the CPU. And yeah, you may get like a nanosecond faster, but like I don't know, nanoseconds matter. I just like that design insofar as
There are some games where Strix using normal DDR5 to Strix using on package memory, I had like a 30% performance loss. So there are times where it's massively higher performance, actually.
yeah. So there's things that I just appreciate a lot about Lunar Lake, but they came off on the back foot, and I think the biggest problem for Lunar Lake is that the GPU side of it was not as much better as it needed to be to really seal the deal. Like if they came in with a big fat GPU on there, and you were like, hey, look, this game is 2 times better. However much that's going to be. I mean, we have $1,000 handhelds now. We have $1,400
Mm-hmm.
handhelds now. So I really think that they should have just put the biggest, fattest GPU on there, put the memory bandwidth on there, and just said, here it is, right? Like, this is what Intel Lunar Lake is. And if they could have showed up with 50, 62 times the performance, I think that's what people really want. If it was like matching 8840U and matching HX370, it's like, well, why do I care?
Mm-hmm.
Drivers are better on AMD or less problematic. I can run older games. It just feels like, what's the point? So it is better. It is awesome. Typically, especially if you offset TDP to include the package memory, you can see that Lunar Lake is actually a bit better, but a bit better doesn't sell. So that's pretty much where it comes down to. They really should have made a bigger GPU on that guy and fed it properly.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I actually was talking to people in the Moore's Laws at Discord about this the other day, and I think I said pretty similar things. It's just like the way Lunar Lake was pitched to me is it's like, yeah, it doesn't have the strongest CPU, it doesn't have the strongest GPU, but it's supposed to be the best balanced like 15-watt package you could get without needing dedicated graphics. And then it came out and it was like, and since then it's actually aged to be a little slower than Strix Point, I think. But at least when it came out, maybe won by 5-10%. And I was like, oh, that's it. I would have
Yeah,
expected a 20-30% win for this to really be like the gaming APU from Intel.
yeah. It just was not enough. So from Intel's point of view, they really should have tried to crush whatever AMD had, and especially whatever AMD was going to come forward with. And AMD has been kind of holding back on themselves. Like
Oh
they
yeah.
keep on putting a bit bigger GPU on there, but they don't feed it. So ostensibly what they're going to come with. So you could just be like, this is what we have to target, and they didn't. So that's pretty unfortunate. So hopefully, as they go forward, they push further into because that's all we are. We're just GPU bound. People want to play at 1080p with medium settings. They don't want to play at 720p with low settings. They want to be pushing it. Like 1080p is like where they want to be, and
Hmm.
that's them. People saying I want to do 1080p in medium settings is already them compromising in
Yes.
their head. So like you can't go lower than that, and that's just basically where we are.
Well, speaking of the future, Lucas writes in and says, "Hi guys, what's the likelihood of a Panther Lake handheld in your opinion? On paper, it sounds pretty good. Good enough if RDNA 2 is still found in $600 devices at least. Driver support is what killed it the last time, I think. Do you think anybody will take the chance of giving Intel another shot here. And just to recap, I actually put this out last week. I mean, I don't know. Panther Lake's had a lot of mixed reporting, like kind of everything out of Intel these days. But at least if it turns out well, what it seems like it might achieve is bringing like Arrow Lake CPU. So as to say, like competing with like the 14 core models in laptop. Like it might bring that multi-threading to Lunar Lake's same power package, so 30 watts, while having a GPU that's like maybe 30% faster in the same package. And it can use cheaper memory now. It doesn't have to be on package. So I guess to summarize, like, how interesting do you think that would be? Because I think some people think that's not very impressive, but it's like, well, you know, if they like double multi-threading performance at 30 watts while giving you 30% more GPU, if it is an if they manage to do that, that might be the best handheld gaming APU for a brief amount of time, unless, of course, you spend $1,700 for Strix Halo.
Yeah. Again, I would have to wait until if anything even materializes. The only real handheld that we had was the MSI Claw AI8 and the 7 version, and even MSI now has a Z2E version that has supplanted that. So who knows if MSI is going to go along with Intel again?
I'd imagine some small Chinese company will, but who knows?
Yeah, but I mean, like, that's, you know.
But when does that come out? What, end of next year? Is that too late?
Yeah, I don't know. I like, when I look at this, I don't find it to be all that impressive. So I don't know. From where I'm standing right now, I don't think I'm not really looking forward to it at all.
It sounds like, you know, it's not anything having to do with Panther Lake's performance on paper. You're just kind of worried that like the buy-in isn't there from their partners to make it, basically. Right.
Yeah. I mean, like, that's really going to be where it is, because I think that, you know, the MSI Claw 8 is, it's nice, especially the 8-inch version, the MSI Claw AI8. That is pretty nice. It really comes down to like form factor and what they're going to do with it, and competing insofar as having similar specs to what people anticipate for having a handheld: 80 watt hour battery, a nice display, you know, OLED, whatever. So you need to have some vendor that is going to be able to deliver that for you, because just having the chip alone, I don't know. I really don't know. I think like the bigger thing would be, like the Nvidia partnership thing that's going to happen in however many years is probably going to be the I don't even think it's going to really apply to handhelds. And what's funny is we actually talked about Enforce at the last podcast that we did, and also like saying Nvidia should acquire Intel, but that is like something that I would look forward to more, even though that's like super far away and I don't even know when that's going to happen, than anything that they have right now. But that's sight unseen. I don't know where they are, and I haven't really been paying all that much attention to it, but it's not something that is on my radar.
This piece of content is brought to you by the fans that support the independent journalism of Moore's Law is Dead on Patreon. And it does need supporting, from personal attacks from tech elites that get mad when we tell you that they are lying to gamers and their own shareholders, to legal attacks from mega corporations that cost the team time and money. This is expensive and often very stressful work. And it's work that doesn't depend on access journalism, nor depend on NDAs or agreements that would sanitize our opinions and hold us back. No, nothing holds us back, and we are independently funded, and we use said funding to do things like pay professional renderers to show you products before they come out, so that the sources that provided us the original pictures don't get in trouble. Or we also create bonus content like Die Shrinks, where you have videos and interviews coming out multiple times a month exclusively to reward our patrons with the extra content that we know they would like to see, whether it's inside scoops or more in-depth conversation and stuff that we just know wouldn't profit if we put it out publicly, but it doesn't need to profit for our fans on Patreon because it is self-funded. And so if you want any of that bonus content, or you want to support the independent journalism of Moore's Law is Dead, or honestly, if you just want to support me, Dan, Gerard, Carbon Cry, or Jesse and Maurice so that we have food on the table every day, consider supporting Moore's Law is Dead on Patreon. And to those that already support us there, I'll see you on the Discord. So perfect. Chris Fish writes, and it says the Intel and Nvidia products for consumers seem to be several years away, But let's say somehow they rush something out in 2026. What sort of product would you like to see Intel and Nvidia do? Say that would be Razor Lake late next year. If somehow they manage to shoehorn in an Nvidia tile that quickly, what would you want it to do? And just in general, are you excited about this partnership?
It feels like a weird partnership in a number of ways. I feel like, so I there's a lot of stock trading type of things. Like I rode the wave of Intel like at 19 to 21, back to 19 to 21. So I rode that wave a few times, and then Trump coming in and going to 25, then Nvidia coming in, and then them going to 30. And now there's a lot of people that are like, oh, there's a deal coming with TSMC, and I'm like, what?
Hmm.
And there's just a lot of, I don't know what's going on, but I feel like there's like pumpers and dumpers that are just
There's a lot of
saying
that
things.
lately in the market. So
Yeah. So I don't know what's gonna, and like tomorrow morning, I'm very interested because apparently some Taiwanese article wrote an article, like Taiwanese news outlet asked TSMC if they're doing anything, and they were like, TSMC reiterated that they're not working with Intel. So I anticipate pre-market activity to be pretty
just so
negative for
everyone
Intel.
knows, I was told, I mean, I know people who are testing Nova Lake right now. It supposedly uses TSMC 2 nanometer. So if they're saying it doesn't, which is what you're referencing, I believe, I would have to assume that means their partnership is so small they don't need to mention it, or it's been delayed a year. I don't know.
Yeah, it's fascinating. There's just a bunch of stuff that's going on that, from the outside in, like Liputan, how he's running things, I'm not in agreement with, because he's
Hmm.
like, why am I going to build a new node if I don't have customers? I'm like, you have to build a new node because you guys need to do that. And I feel like, Trump coming in and saying, he wants onshore, nodes here. I feel like there's a lot of pressure and contention. Also, like Apple is supposed to be doing something with Intel,
See, I
and
could
it's
see
like,
iPhones and like, I could see an American edition of the Switch 2 there. I could see that maybe.
yeah, I mean, there's a thing there that I can totally understand as the what the current administration wants to try to achieve. But then I see Lip Bhutan kind of just like
Hmm.
sitting back, waiting for people to pay him money to do these things, and it's just out of order. There's a catch 22 there that doesn't really make much sense to me, even though it is progressing. I have no idea ultimately how this is all going to shake out, and when we get to an Nvidia tile on a GPU. Sorry for digressing, but it's just like, if we get to that point next year miraculously that an Nvidia tile is on there, honestly, whatever they could put on there, I'd be super excited about. Like, even if it was tiny and small, whatever is the latest and greatest whatever Nvidia has, I would be super excited from a handheld perspective. I don't personally think the tile would be there for a handheld perspective. I think it would be for Nvidia to say, hey, you buy these Intel chips because Intel still has a large server market share. That these tiles can be on, Nvidia tiles can be on the SoC of the server end, and that's a good shoehorn for Nvidia to get in there on like 1U
Well, and it
servers.
also right ensures that AMD can't push them out a laptop with this massive APU wave going on.
Yeah, so yeah, there's lots there. For what it's worth, I mean, not for nothing. Like my company specifically, we still buy Intel whole stock and barrel, even though we would be better off going to AMD. But no one ever gets fired for buying Intel, just like no one got fired for buying IBM in the 80s. So, even though the server market share has crashed, and you like mobile market, like laptop market, Intel still does very well. So they still do well, and I don't see them, like, as much as I would love to see it from a handheld perspective. I don't even think that that's really there, and maybe, like, I don't even think Jensen Wong cares, right? Like, he has his chip in the
Hmm.
Switch 2, and he's like, oh, that's good enough for me. I don't
There's
know that
been
he.
rumors of like an Nvidia gaming handheld APU. Although I have to be honest, I haven't really put much out about that, but I've heard rumors from other people.
It would be genuinely exciting, because we desperately need, again, the biggest part here, we have CPU galore and CPU for days
Hmm.
on handhelds today.
CPU is
We can,
solved. Yes.
yeah, we do not have GPU solved. And any vendor that comes in here with a proper GPU solution, especially Nvidia, which has a lot of tech, it would be, if you could just, like, I mean, the Switch 2, the biggest thing there that everyone really craves is what Nvidia is bringing to the table. So if you can have something that's the most advanced and better, yeah, it's going to be some. Not for nothing. If we had Intel Lunar Lake with an NVIDIA GPU, that
Mm.
would be sensational.
Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of people don't get that. Like, I know it hasn't happened yet, but there's a lot of OEMs pissed at Intel right now, and a lot of, I mean, look, they can't. MSI just switched, and MSI was one of the biggest Intel sycophants on the market, and they just switched to AMD for their handhelds because they had to, because no one wanted an Intel one. The second you put an Nvidia sticker on a handheld, even if it has an Intel CPU, that is going to do a lot for allowing Intel to stay in a lot of markets. AMD, they haven't done it, but I think AMD is this close to pushing them out of some markets. And
Oh yeah.
and Nvidia backing up Intel, at least it keeps a fire under AMD's ass. Is the way I look at it. Now, but I will say this too. I think you might agree with this. All this money being dumped into Intel, I don't think people understand. It's a lot, but it's not as much as you would think when you look at tens of billions of dollars of revenue a quarter, and like just giving Intel like whatever they're at now from all of these. Like Intel burned like to dozens of billions of dollars losing market share to AMD. And so I do want to say, like, to the people that think Nvidia giving Intel $5 billion and bailing out their APUs with their own tiles, that is not the same. That is not going to kill AMD overnight. AMD's been competing with an Intel that has, what is it, like, I think they're only double, but they're still double the revenue of AMD a quarter. They used to be like quadruple or 5 times the revenue. Like, $5 billion is like what, half of an Intel quarter. So it's still not remotely enough, I think, to just swamp AMD out of the market. I mean, honestly, that's an argument people said about Xbox or PlayStation, that Microsoft has so much money that Sony is just going to lose by default. It's not what we saw happen. So I don't think AMD is screwed. I just think there's more competition.
Yeah, I don't think AMD is screwed at all either. I think right now AMD's biggest, not for it, unfortunately for us, like a lot of things came at the wrong time for us.
Mm.
They started slapping NPUs that are just basically inert silicon for all intents and
Did you
purposes.
see the
Just
thing
think,
about in the news about Intel raising prices on Raptor Lake because no one wants the NPU models? Like
I have not seen.
Raptor Lake
Yeah,
remains more popular because no one is paying extra to get the NPU. No one.
and why would you? Yeah, but I mean, like all of these companies are just slapping these things on.
Mhm.
There's a part of me that thinks that Microsoft is the main reason because they're like, we
Yes.
need Copilot
Yeah.
NPU stuff. So they're just like, understood. We're going to put this here, and it's just been this inert silicon that's wasting space that we're all paying for, and it's been atrocious. And I think, like, for AMD's point of view, it's like, I would hope is that, like, like when we get to RDNA 5, that the NPU could just be the part of the GPU like it should be. And how tensor cores are on Nvidia GPUs. So I think that's ultimately what they should get to. And they just had a was a PyTorch for Windows
Hmm.
just a few days ago on AMD. So AMD, I think, for better or worse, AI has interrupted this market a lot, and everyone is pivoting to satisfy AI requirements and trying to somehow meet them in some fashion so that they're not wasting silicon, because that NPU does squat for a lot of people.
Yeah, and you know what's going to be interesting? I do know for a fact. I haven't talked about it yet, but I mean, this will be in a future video where I'll get into the details. I know for a fact Xbox Magnus has a decently powerful NPU on it, and I think that's probably the least surprising thing anyone has ever heard. Having said that, though, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what's going on with how Mark Cerny plans to do all the AI stuff with the PlayStation 6. What I think would be interesting is if the Xbox has an NPU and the PlayStation just doesn't bother to and just uses the GPU. To anyone who thinks that sounds crazy, they're kind of already doing that with the PS5 Pro. The PS5 Pro's iteration of RDNA architectures has 300 tops. The 7900 XTX has 246. So they have 30% more with significantly less compute just because of how they designed it. And that to me makes me wonder, it'd be interesting if Sony just skipped NPUs altogether and what that would look like, because I didn't realize this. I looked recently at the 9070 XT. It has almost 1600 tops. I'm like, well, if that is 1600, what's a 50 top NPU going to help with? If who knows, the
Right.
PS5's version could have like 3000 tops. At that point, you might as well just use 10% of the compute to run AI operations when you need to simultaneously. And I almost wonder if you need NPUs if you just include graphics tiles that are that powerful.
That's what I would hope that we graduate to. rather than MPUs. The only benefit that I know of MPUs, what's the guy's name? He was in charge of the Surface line, Panos Panay. Um, he was on stage saying that the MPU that was on the which was the first MPU that came on? Was it the
But technically, I think Phoenix had it if we're talking
yeah
x86 with 10
yeah
tops.
so so at that time it was taking hundreds of milliwatts, is what the power of the MPU
Sure.
took.
And
So
that's the benefit, right? In a
yeah, is
laptop, in a home console, I don't know if that really
yeah,
matters.
yeah. So exactly. So it just took very little power, but effectively nothing used it. And even like Auto SR kind of sucks. Like the matrix of where that comes into being useful is who cares. So I don't know. I'm not a big fan of MPUs in how they've just wasted and kind of diverted a bunch of time. And I would love if they could just go to a path where it's on the GPU side, where it should be anyway, so that we could use ML in various ways outside of just something that's outside of that pipeline.
All right. I have a few fun ending reader mails here for you. So the first one, Transpose 1195 writes in and says, "What are your thoughts on handheld PC pricing? Valve just dropped the price of the base model of the Steam Deck by 20%, while other manufacturers seem to be pushing prices higher with every release. Yes, the Steam Deck hardware is a bit old, I know, but I have plenty of older games in my backlog that should run fine, and if I'm on a handheld, that's probably what I'm going to be playing anyways. I don't know, the incremental performance improvement in newer devices just doesn't seem worth the price to me."
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. It's hard to recommend, like for instance, when I did the GPD Win Mini had the HX370 in it. When I was benchmarking it, it was like, how can I possibly recommend to you to get the HX370 model when it's $1,300 when they also make a GPD Win Mini with the 8840U and that's $700? Like
Oh,
this
God,
price
yeah.
gap that make no
And
sense.
people underestimate Hawkpoint. Hawkpoint's pretty god dang efficient. It's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. So it was like, and I tried showing them the comparison. I'm like, I can't possibly recommend HX370 in any shape or form at this price. It just doesn't make any sense. Even with 16 CUs, we're just not seeing any real benefit here. Not the cost increase benefit that we can expect out of there. So I feel that. I feel that 100%. And we kind of alluded to that in the same conversation, that it's almost like there's two ends of this conversation. There's the Steam Deck just to satisfy what you want, to get what you can at $320 for the Steam Deck LCD at 256 gig with 20% off. Or you just get the Strix Halo Win 5 because that's where you're going to have the power. And everything in between is just like kind of this no man's land of like, why would you spend hundreds more to get 20% more performance if you're going to push more power into it? Like, what is the gain that you're actually getting out of this? The value proposition doesn't make a bunch of sense. So I feel that 100%. And I think I can commiserate easily with like trying to, say that. And I'm in agreement. Like, if you are the type of person that doesn't have a PC gaming handheld, the Steam Deck should be one of the first ones that you take a look at.
Mm.
If you start taking a look at the Steam Deck OLED, which is going to be like 550 with 20% off, now you're like, oh, okay, if the Xbox Ally, which is using the same chip, has a 120 hertz 1080p screen with VRR, that's also a very nice display, that's only $50 more. And then you kind of start
Going up the
upselling yourself
ladder.
in like weird ways. And that's where things get kind of really muddy. And it's like you really have to like really be on the extremes on either end for this to get like super less money. It's like these are my bookends, and these are the only thing that makes sense. And as soon as you start like going into the stuff in the middle, that's where things can get really muddy. And it's the good news is that you are want for choice, and there's a zillion handhelds in different form factors that are available to you. So you especially don't miss out on the secondhand market. The secondhand market is a great way to enter into this. Someone told me that they got an original Lenovo Legion Go with the Z1E. They paid $200 for it. And I was like, that is insane. That's like a deal of a century. You should be very happy that you got that. And so take a look at the secondhand market or like Facebook Marketplace of people that got these things and didn't wind up using them, because that's a great way to get in there and just have something and just be happy with what you got until we get to 2027, where things are actually going to be in a much better place.
Yeah, I mean, where my mind goes is I hope with the Steam Deck 2, Valve looks at the market and they see, and this applies to Sony too. I hope Sony doesn't go overboard with PS6 handheld pricing, because I know you can. I know the market's telling you you could get away with it. But I also think there's things that I mean, what's a good example here? Like, no one was using CDs before the PS1, and the market didn't tell you needed that. But guess what? It worked out hella well for the PlayStation brand. And so sometimes you just need to know to not always do what everybody else is doing. And so I would hope that, you keep saying everyone buys the more expensive thing. I would hope that with a Steam Deck 2, like, I don't know what the specs will be. I don't know if they will use a custom chip or, just use one of the RDNA 5 APUs we've talked about. But I would hope they go in two directions, and they kind of have one that is more premium, it's probably $800, probably like triple the performance, whatever, like something that is truly modern and they'll use for another 6 years or something. But I would also hope like maybe they either take the bad yields or they make a smaller APU.
Right.
I mean, maybe they could just use Medusa point with 8 compute units and just only leave like, 4 Zen 6C enabled. And it's kind of just a backwards. I mean, obviously it runs Linux, so it's not, you don't really have to worry about backwards compatibility. But they could say, hey, it's 4 cores again, 8 compute units again. It doesn't cost any more to make, and we're just launching a $400 update that's twice as good. Like, I
Right.
hope they do that, because I do think there's a place in the market that no one's touching, that Steam is probably uniquely positioned to take advantage of, because no one's going to trust a
Sure.
random Chinese company to make a
Yeah.
budget handheld. But Steam makes one, and people will go, oh, I trust them to do a good job.
Right. Yeah. I'm in agreement. I this always comes up, and I'm always sympathizing with people that want to have a low cost handheld, and there's people that just like, I don't want all this crazy stuff. I don't want this $1,400 thing. Can I just have this $200 thing? Can I just have this $300 thing? And unfortunately, it's getting further and further away from that. I hope that they do. I really hope that they do. It's just that I don't know if they will. It really comes down to, like, Valve does have a better just-in-time process for manufacturing, and how much better that they could get that into position. I think the one thing that Valve doesn't do very well
Mm.
is partner with big box retailers for however long those they need to be, or even just on Amazon, right? Like having it be on
Well,
sale
they're not
on
very
Steam alone.
corporatey, are they? They're
No,
privately owned. They do things their own way, so that's not really surprising.
yeah, it's like I would love to see the Steam Deck do better, but there's lots of people that don't even know it exists because they don't go to steam.com, right? They don't go to steampower.com, and it's just like, okay, it's plastered on their website all the time, and they get,
Mhm.
however many users, but there's only what 5-6 million Steam Decks that have been sold. So you take a look at their concurrent user count, which is like 30-40 million or whatever. So it's only a fraction of that user base that is constantly using Steam that bought a Steam Deck. And I don't know. Maybe they don't care. Maybe they just like they're happy with where they are. For regardless of whichever way you look at this, while PC gaming handhelds existed before the Steam Deck existed, the Steam Deck is the
Mm.
catalyst that has done all of this that we've seen 100%. And I would argue that SteamOS, GameScope, and Steam Deck lit the fire under Microsoft to make the Xbox full screen experience. So they are directly responsible for that as well. So there's just a lot of things that they did. So hopefully, yes, hopefully they do make a low cost version and a more expensive one.
And here's a fun thought as well. I mean, the current Steam Deck APU, the 6 nanometer shrink, is like, I believe, 130 millimeters squared, only 4 cores. It's really kind of the equivalent of a Zen 2 C core, if those would have existed back then. It's clocked lower, targets lower things, um, and only 8 compute units. Not only do I think they could make something that doesn't really cost much more if they just kept it the same, like you go 8 RDNA 5 compute units, 4 Zen 5C, or honestly though, maybe 4 Zen 6 low power. Like, it's
Mhm.
conceivable you don't even need C cores. You can use the low power cores, which I have a document that showed that they want these to use less than a watt per core. The fun thing would be is this on like 4 or 3 nanometer would be like a I don't even know, 60 millimeter squared size, like just absolutely tiny
Tiny,
thing,
right? Yeah,
where it would keep the cost probably below 400. But it is newer. I mean, this would probably consume like 5 to 6 watts, 7 watts. You could conceivably have that 10-hour battery life, half the size Steam Deck. That's also
right.
cheaper to make since it's newer tech. That would be that would kind of flip right when everyone's making bigger and bigger handhelds. That would kind of flip it over again and go, they don't need to be huge. And now we have one that can run every modern game in whatever it is, 900p, and actually you can do it for 8 hours straight now.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see a Steam Deck Lite. Um, I don't know if they're going to do it, but I at least know that they would be very concerned about ergonomics and trackpads on the smallest device that they could possibly make.
Yeah, I've heard that the size of the screen and stuff is more important. So when I say I think they'd probably make it a little thinner and smaller. I don't think they would actually make it that much smaller because even though I like things that are smaller, most people agree that about this big is where it's comfortable to play the game like it's a AAA game.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for me, 7-inch screens are now the absolute minimum of what I consider acceptable,
Hmm.
and I've moved on to like 8-inch of like what I is my preference. So if I can get like an 8-inch 16:9 display that has absolute like the tiniest bezels possible, that is like my ideal screen size, which has certain dimensions that are outside of the scope of what people like for a handheld because they still have ideas of like older PSP, PS Vita styled devices, right? That like are in the pocket range.
All right, final question. Chris Rich writes in, imagine it's 2030 and you want to buy a new laptop. Would you expect to have to choose between an AMD APU and an Intel and Nvidia APU, or do you think you will even be bothering to consider dedicated GPU laptops 5 years from now?
I don't think I will. I have a 4090 that I connect to Oculink. I do know that there's like MCIO and Thunderbolt 5 coming in various ways. So there's still those people that crave like absolute performance. I say that sight unseen of whatever the latest and greatest GPU is that might cost like $4,000 or whatever. And depending on what it can do, I might, take back my words. But I am already in a position where I have started to like not care about my 4090 as much. I bought a
Agreed.
7900 GRE, and that is like my PC console that I have in my living room now. So I have that with an Xbox One adapter that wakes up my PC. I just press the Xbox button, it switches the input automatically, lights it up, and then I just use that as my console PC. And the 7900 GRE is honestly fine. It does 1440p and upscales to 4K quite nicely. And if you figure by 2030, we're gonna definitely surpass what the 7900 GRE is,
Hmm.
especially with FSR5 and if, whatever the Redstone is. So all of these advancements coming on, I can 100% see myself in this place where whatever Strix Halo thing is, like the big bad boy, even if that was $2,000 as the full kit and caboodle, I'd probably do that. I'd probably just do that and be like, yeah, I'm good. I don't really care about anything else. I'm pretty much happy where I am right here.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been saying since Hawk Point that we finally hit exactly where you need, where you get a desktop experience in an APU and can play every game out. No, it's not as fast as a, you know, 3080M, but it also uses a fifth of the power, and it's just more stable. There's less crashes. The laptop will last longer, um, and you don't have any VRAM issues anymore. And I think if I was there at Hawk Point, I mean, I'm doubly there by now, and I think there will always be that one high end GPU that will be paired with a CPU and laptop to the people that want that. But I
Yeah,
think absolutely by the Medusa lineup, where you can choose
yeah,
between 8, 24, and 48 compute units, it's over. No one should be
yeah.
really considering dedicated anymore.
I'm firmly of the belief is that as well because I feel like it's going to be a comical upgrade, insofar as like, wow, it's that much better. So yeah, I can see that. I think like Strix Halo handles 1080p content fairly comfortable, and I feel like Medusa Halo will be in the 1440 upscale to 4K type of area very easily, and that is like more than fine.
Well, please, my friend, thank you for coming on. Tell everybody where they can find you.
I am on YouTube. You can find me. My channel is called The Phawx. It's PHAWX. I typically look at handheld gaming PCs and trying to push them in various different ways and give you the most comprehensive look at them to get a better understanding of what's going on.
Well, I can't recommend his channel enough to everybody. Do make sure you subscribe. There will be links in the description to where you can find him. And in fact, now would be a fortuitous time to subscribe because I have a feeling he's going to be very busy over the next few years when it comes to testing handhelds in a way that you've probably never been before. So please do that. And again, also make sure you're subscribed to Moore's Law Z on YouTube. Subscribe to Broken Silicon, your podcast app of choice, and give us a review there as well. And then also consider joining the Patreon to ask guests like the Phawx questions. And otherwise, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, everybody, and have a good rest of your week.
Thanks so much. Bye bye.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carbon Cry and Kerry No Sugata as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About/Support page in the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Kerry No Sugata as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and Jean-Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong, we love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guest questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit, and give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels: Brad Medlin, Drita Full, Z Jits, Daniel D, Nicholas Buckner, Aaron Close, Jan Rauner, Toka, MJB1, Daniel Hyde, GZ Ziggy, SNES Chalmers, Jem Ferreira, Valcom Alev, Compressed AI Blocks, Jensen Wang, Gregor Sacker, Sarcastro, Chris Rich, Evan Dingle, Hal Booma, Shredburb, Sammy Malas, Curry King 3, Krizin Thenos, The Boss Haas, Tommy, Jonathan, Jake223, Jake Martin, Zlicky, Amiable Chief, Gamers Unite, I Should, Meat and Pork, Ian Clifford, Tim Robb, Travis Gooding, Zootsu Taylor, Mads, Patty Cakes, Greg, Michael McGee, Stephen Coates, Mark Mitchell, James Anderson, Win Wang, Mark Raidmaker, Coal Addict, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Cameron, Michelle Pell, Hexapuma, Teak Autumn, Reginald Ari, Winstar, Little Germany, James I. Raider, Shay, Milton, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, Stephen Dick, Mac Daffy, Justin Bustle, Austin Haggerty, Jofit, John Swin, Brian Scanlon, Hardland, Josephine Kelly, Jansen Angima, Slushbob, Brian Wright, Sisyphos 7771, The Forbidden Juice, RB Racer, Thalo 215, Alex Vega, Michael Cozy, Crystal Joe, Solarized 80, Alberga Gun, Kikum, Sprutnik, Brian B, Hootat42, Cornster 671, Penta Winta, State Farm Snake, Matthew Cassells, Hal Richard, Omega Doge, Don Wick, Boomstick, Hooger, Ander Kiwi, Mr. Tiger, Penguins Love AI, Porcelain Oats, Nixus Mania, AI Soldier 789, Smash Axley, Bespoke exclamation point, Karim Al Masri, Dan M 1988, Fred Berger, Rahil Chi Bowles, Kevin Coons, Magnos, Rag Kusis, Armin Vakatura, Jonathan Harris, Kalen Reichel, Kainush Kagani, Johnny Tran, Cyber, Ahmed, Bjorn Toft, Chuna, Josh, Abigail Schiff, Arc.io, RK0, Penguins from NKVD, Angel of Cake, and of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.